Welcome to the regular City Council meeting, October 10th, 2016. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, everyone's here. Lisa's not. Piper is sitting in. Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes, September 26th, 2016.
I've got one on page 7. It's like 2/3 of the way down that top paragraph. It says complicates things. It should have been uncomplicates things. So it's kind of important. That's all I had.
I have something was handed to me here. I'm not going to read it. It's a first for me, but Carl wanted to amend what he had said in the meeting, and it's not bad. It's just correcting the information. So I'm going to give this to the clerk and let her say what it is.
Well, is this a comment in our minutes?
Yeah.
Well, we need
It
to know
needs to be
what
read in the record.
She's going to read it.
Okay.
She said.
Okay. Corrections to public comments, meeting of September 26th. South Lyon Woods, 32 new trailers this year, 46 new trailers total since last year. 30,130 square feet of 1.5-inch cap over asphalt the past year on the roadways. Heinen Engineering. Oh, it's misspelled. It should be generic. City anniversary, 663 days and counting down to the 150-year date of July 21st, 2018. Citywide effort would be absolutely necessary. Respectfully submitted on this date, October 10th, 2016.
Move the minutes as amended.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
We will vote.
I just had one on the check register, the first page, the $2,000 for the Pumpkin Fest, the farmer's market tent rental. Is that typical?
That is typical, and it actually comes out of the farmer's market account. Sponsors pay into the farmer's market, and then the farmer's market rents the tent.
Okay,
So
and
sponsors
that's-
offset it with fees.
So the booth charges for farmers markets
And
project
sponsors.
this cost to be at the end of the year. Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
I'll move the bills.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the agenda.
You should have in front of you an item I would like to add to the agenda under new business as the new item 1A. It is called the completion agreement for South Lyon Square. I do apologize for the late notice of you getting this. We had a meeting on Friday with the owner of South Lyon Square. We're able to confer with our engineers today on estimated costs. The city attorney was able to complete the agreement this afternoon and send it to the owner late this afternoon and his attorney. And the owner is supposed to be here this evening to help discuss this with the council. This is similar to the item that we met last Monday in special meeting on for the Knowles development.
You said 1A?
Yes, under new business.
I move the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, public comment. Anything on the agenda this evening that's not on the agenda this evening that you'd like to speak about?
Good evening, Council and Mr. Mayor. I've got some highlights that I thought I'd present to you. I thought you'd like to hear it. Something that's been ongoing all summer long with our Presbyterian church here in town. As you know, it's a very historic church. It has a state of Michigan marker out there in front of it. They've been doing some beautiful work on their exterior overhangs, and I've talked to some of the craftsmen that are doing it. It's pre-cut and pre-assembled and tested, and then put up there on their building. It's coming out beautiful, and it's been going on all summer, and nobody probably noticed it very much. But it just shows that they're dedicated to improving their structure in town and preserving the historic nature of their building, okay? And I think that's admirable and a good model for us. Okay, the next item, the wooden bridge in McCaddy Park got completely painted yesterday. I was there. I didn't do this one. I've been doing some others, but I didn't do this one. And it's acrylic latex, white, soft satin, semi-gloss. And they did the whole thing. And it looks beautiful. Okay. I want to mention something. I've already mentioned it once. I want to mention it again. Our parking lot that was finished, it looks beautiful, and the lines have been put on it since the last time. The grass that was seeded hydroponically, I believe they call it, hydroponic seeding, is coming along beautiful. I'm amazed, okay? And this whole thing was done with our own DPW workers who did it without a transit, okay? And we have one, but it wasn't there just yet. Okay, and the thing's within a quarter of an inch. If you've ever done cement work in any way other than sidewalks, it's very hard, if you don't know what you're doing, to get a surface that big within a quarter of an inch, okay? And all this was done without the benefit of our buddies from HRC. And in my opinion, that's worth making note of, okay? And I believe we've saved the city somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 when you consider the work across the way at the historic village with our fencing. And now, so obviously, we spent a few dollars, but we're talking spend $1 to save 100. And that goes along with part of my philosophy. Anyway, I'm just letting you know, put in perspective of real money today, okay? We saved a lot of money in this deal, and it'll last for a long time. Okay, and I want to thank the DPW. Through the summer, they've helped me with my little projects from time to time. The zipper slide in the park for the kids to play on, they got it fixed this past weekend. That's the deal where they jump on it and slide back and forth. It hasn't worked all summer. It took internal parts. They got it. Works great. Now, I just want to make mention of something from last week, our special meeting. If you think in terms of council meetings as quarters in a football game that never ends and goes on and on, I just want to tell you that, Mr. Mayor, if I was keeping score, this last football game, you racked up some good points on the board. I got to give you credit, the way that meeting was run. Okay, and I hope we can see some minutes from the Planning Commission that I haven't seen in quite a long time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl. Well, this is a pretty special night, I think. We have a business owner here that
We need to hold off on that presentation till 8 o'clock.
No, I'm not present, I'm just
Okay.
talking. I thought maybe everybody might want to say a little something here. I remember coming into town when I feel like I was a kid, long time ago, and I can't tell you how many root beers that I've had there. I can't even begin to even think how many I've had. And hot dogs and just amazing past for me, because I grew up in a part of town in Bedford Township that we used to have foot-long hot dogs and all that all the time. I came out here and it was like, oh my gosh, we still got somebody that can do this and do it well and do it better than everybody else. And you are surely going to be missed, but you also deserve your time to retire and to ride off into the sunset smiling, because you really deserve it. And definitely going to be missed. One thing I do want to make a comment, if I said something to Bob about it, is I don't remember when the Dream Cruise was started, but I do remember when we had our own cruise here in South Lyon that one year, and it looked like American Graffiti had invaded South Lyon. And it was pretty amazing to me, and it's huge impact on me from all these years. I'm a car guy, but I'd be lucky if I can change the tire and put water in the stuff. You know, I'm just not that guy, but I like to drive them. And you really did it up nice. It hasn't been done anywhere as close to that since. We're trying, but boy, that's a tough act to follow. And so I wanted to say from the deepest part of my heart and what you've meant to my family and everybody that I know that have come to South Lyon, that know me, that have come there to have food, that you were truly going to be missed, and you had a wonderful business there. And I think everybody might want to have a little something to say. If they don't, that's okay. But Maggie.
I'm going to present a little bit of a different perspective, Ed. You had great food, great service. I think you know what I always order, the BLT, and I'm still a little upset that I can't get the recipe for the coleslaw. But I think what I am going to miss the most, quite frankly, is going to be your friendship. You have been so wonderful to me. Whenever I've come over, we've chatted. You have given great advice to me over the years. I think many of us have stopped in and chatted with you about politics. You have a phenomenal mind. You have a good vision. And I think that is what me and some other individuals are going to miss, is that Ed's not going to be around in our lives. And you played a very, very important role for many of us. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your friendship. And it's the friendship that I'm really, really, really going to miss. So best to you, your son, and your wife, and as you move forward. And hopefully you'll come back to town once in a while, and I can give you a hug. So thanks so much.
Mr. Mayor? Let's come down the line.
Looking forward to seeing you guys in that Airstream. Now you're going to have a lot of quality time and a lot of time to finish it. So I was at the RV show Sunday and I was laughing because I kept looking for the Airstreams. But I know you're going to enjoy it, spend a lot of time in it, travel, see the country, and enjoy these years. You guys have definitely deserved it.
Thanks. My family will miss the hamburgers and the foot-longs or the hot dogs and the root beers. Everybody in my family enjoys them, has enjoyed them as they grew up. One of their first treats was being able to go there by themselves. So there's a lot of memories for our family, and we thank you for those. Enjoy your retirement.
Ed, well-deserved retirement, and you will surely be missed, even though I know you're not going really far, but you will be missed. When I moved to South Lyon, almost a decade ago, when I told my friends I was moving to South Lyon, the first thing they said was, "Oh, that's where the root beer place is." And these were for people from out of town, so definitely destination, and you put us on the map, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. So deserve like I said, well-deserved retirement, and I wish you the best, and enjoy it with your family. Thank you, Ed.
I remember my first time at Browns, I was 7 years old, and it was after a soccer game. And I know I come in and out of Browns a lot, but you probably don't recognize me, but I live right down the street and I walk there. And I'm getting married this year, and I was trying to diet and be really strict, and I was like, well, Browns is closing, and I can't do that because this is like an exception. So I would walk back and forth, and with my fiance and friends, we'd go there and, I mean, countless hot dogs, countless double cheeseburgers, bacon, all that good stuff. So I'm happy to say that I'm willing to sacrifice my diet for that. It was a good run. And like I said, from coaching soccer to playing soccer, it was like a tradition afterwards. We would all go to Browns and eat. So thank you for everything you've done for South Lyon as a community. You were a staple, and it's going to be kind of, well, a huge loss, not kind of a loss, but definitely a huge loss, and it's going to be some tough shoes to fill. So again, thank you for everything you've done, all of you. Thank you.
I think it was just a matter of bad timing, because I think Mary would have probably had you cater her wedding if it would have worked out.
Serious thought was given to that.
Clearly, your commitment to the community has been just overwhelming. Your family has been here for a long time, participated every time you drive by there and see baseball team kids enjoying themselves, and you know how tickled they were. I mean, everybody that, when we took our own children there, and how excited they were to be able to go get a Coney, and I still think that root beer that you served was by far the best I've ever had. I have no idea why, but it was just exactly what it needed to be. And
It was the water, Glenn.
That's probably right, yeah. But I really did appreciate going in there for a nice cold root beer. I'm just hoping when you guys end up finding yourselves back in town that you'll be happy with how the place is transitioning and moving forward. And in spite of you guys not being a part of it, we're going to continue working towards improvements. So, but good luck to you, and enjoy your retirement.
You know, Glenn, that was a pretty good statement, because her fiance's family grew up down the street from me. And so we all went to that same place. I had the hot dogs and the root beers and the pops. So she might have been able to cater that.
Get away with it.
So, well, maybe Bob?
Well, I know Ed and I've talked over many a conversation at lunchtime, whether at the counter or at the table, and it's funny because most people think about going there and getting a burger or a Coney. My oldest daughter, Emily, though, is in love with Ed's tuna fish sandwiches. And it's a type of tuna fish sandwich that your grandmother made. It wasn't too much a stick of tuna fish. It was just a nice layer on white toast with a little bit of lettuce. And when I took Emily in there about 3 weeks ago for her last trip there, that's what she ordered. So I'll always have those memories, buddy. Thank you.
I'm wondering if I should echo the water comment. You know, Bob never misses a chance. But the root beer was always wonderful. I made it in actually last week before the weekend, so I didn't have to stand in that horrendous line for the last pour. So it wasn't quite the last pour. And I certainly echo Maggie's comments about we want the recipe for the coleslaw, because that was my favorite thing. But good luck in retirement, and you deserve it.
I will say I remember the first time I took my son there after we moved to South Lyon. When we moved back to Michigan, my son and I were both very excited about one of our favorite hot dog places, which is actually on the other side of the state. But when we moved here and we found Brown's, we found our second home here in South Lyon. Not just our house, but another hot dog place that could be our favorite place, and some place that we could get root beer to take home to make our root beer floats, and we will definitely miss it. Sorry we only got to enjoy it for a couple of years. Wish we could have been here longer, got to enjoy it more often. Ed, enjoy your retirement.
I think I do want to say one more thing. My son moved down to Cincinnati, and he's 30 now, and it means I'm old. So he was a really little guy when I first took him there, and he got into a big discussion with some of his friends, because down there they don't really know what conies are, and don't know what they don't really understand the mix. And it got into that, and then he brought the Browns up more than once in the conversation, and they were like, what is this place, you know, whatever it was. And then he brought in the root beer, And they were like, he says, they don't even serve root beer down there. You know, I mean, it was like, so your name got tossed all the way down almost into Kentucky because he was bringing it from South Lyon down there and having a big argument over how to make hot dogs. And he says, Browns did it right. And I hate to keep saying hot dogs because we've had a lot of other food here that was good too, but that one just sticks with me because I was a kid growing up. My diet doesn't allow me to eat those too much either. I guess I could. I'm married. I stay away from as much as I can, not because I don't love them, it's because they're just not good for me. So, but you are truly going to be missed. I just want to state that again. There's so many people I'm sure that can state the same thing. All the things that have been done in the city through the years has come and gone through your shop, you know, and I'm sure you've heard so many stories and so many things from people that you could probably write a book. And it would be probably very interesting, I would think. So
I have to say that you must be just incredibly proud of the valiant service that last week. I mean, your staff was there for a long time and humping the entire day. That was really quite a commitment. That was very impressive. They had to just be ragged out when it was all over with.
That's a question. Ed, with all the memorabilia, where's that going?
A lot of it's been sold off to customers.
Okay.
The big stuff, I'm going to do a small garage sale, what's left, mugs and things like that this Saturday. But most of them are real, local customers.
Okay.
maybe we could convince you to, before you're on the way out, to do some kind of a, not your dad's Brown's root beer down at Witch's Hat or something, maybe? That might be an interesting way to ride out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss your place. I mean, it's not a normal business. Just to be in business that many years and to do what you've done, and it takes huge dedication from yourself, from your family. I mean, you know, I had a business, my wife had a business in town. We know how hard it is to run it. Running a restaurant or a bar or something of that nature is times 10. So, crazy. I'm really going to appreciate the amount of effort you've put in through these years. So, thank you. I want to thank both high schools for coming in together. This doesn't happen very often, and I'm sure this surprised a few people. And I very appreciate you wanting to come and be part of the celebration tonight. Thank you. South Lyon East and South Lyon. With that, I'm going to give you this resolution and proclamation from the city, and also include the to the city of South Lyon. For all
Thank
the
you.
years and all the service that you've given to this community.
Thank you.
So, the City of South Lyon resolution honoring Ed Brown and his family. Whereas the qualities of life upon which we pride ourselves in the City of South Lyon are in part the result of our successful businesses and individuals who make the City of South Lyon their home. And whereas for 56 years, Brown's Root Beer, owned by Ed Brown and his family, has been part of this community, particularly his parents, Max and Nellie Brown, who started a small A&W root beer franchise and hot dog business in 1960 at the northeast corner of South Lafayette and McCaddy Streets. When South Lyon was a small farming community, successfully operated a family-owned business. And whereas, over the past 56 years, Brown's Root Beer has supported and has been part of many community memories, such as the high school homecoming parades, community parades, with the A&W Root Beer mascot, the Pumpkin Fest parades, Little League gatherings, car shows, annual Boy Scout Creek cleanups, quietly behind the scene with many other events and programs. And whereas Brown's Root Beer is proud of their employees and has always regarded them as extended family, included the many high school and college students who went on to have successful families, careers, and personal accomplishments, and the many other South Lyon area residents who work there. And whereas Brown's Root Beer has always been very thankful for the community support they have received and local residents and many travelers to and from the University of Michigan football and basketball games and other university activities at U of M and Eastern Michigan University over the past 56 years. And whereas the City of South Lyon is proud of Brown's Root Beer from its early days as an A&W to 1982 when they became officially known as Brown's Root Beer, and the dining room was added to the present day, representing 6 decades, where over 1 million hot dogs and countless gallons of root beer were served. Whereas we now join the citizens of the City of South Lyon to celebrate Brown's Root Beer for the extraordinary accomplishments, lifelong commitment, and dedication as they retire and move on to their new chapter of their lives. Now, therefore, John Gallis Jr., Mayor of the City of South Lyon, along with the City Council, together with this entire City Council, to hereby honor the Brown family on their retirement and wish them all the very best and luck for the future. Attended to this 10th day of October, 2016 in South Lyon. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Thank all of you. The community's been great to us. We hope we did a good job. We knew we did a good job being in business 56 years, but we never dreamed the outpour that we've had basically in the last year. And the comments, the people have moved from South Lyon, moved out of state, had come back to say thank you for giving us good memories. I had one family this summer that moved to Oklahoma and they were on their way to New York. They came up to have lunch to tell me thank you. I had mail coming for the last 2 weeks every day from people who couldn't make it in to tell them thank you. It's been a great time. It's been a great community. It's taken a lot of time away from my family, which I'm hoping we're going to make it up now. Help-wise, my help is my family too. Your business cannot survive unless you have good help. We want to try to put together a good team of workers. Most of them have worked for me for many, many years, and we're going to stay in touch with them. We're going to help them as much as we can. I thank you very much.
Okay. Phil Whiteford wants
Phil Weipert, County Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for recognizing me. On behalf of the County Board of Commissioners, we'd like to give you a proclamation honoring Brown's Group here and the entire Brown family. Whereas it is appropriate to recognize special people, businesses, groups, and organizations that make Oakland County a great place to live, work, play, and prosper. Whereas Oakland County has been privileged to have such a special family and business that has contributed to the vitality of the Southline community. And whereas in 1960, Max and Nellie Brown opened an A&W drive-in restaurant on Pontiac Trail, contributing to the town's nickname, the best little city. And whereas Max and Nellie Brown had the vision of making a true family business by bringing their son Ed to work when he was only 10 years old. And whereas the family business has continued with Ed taking over from his parents, and the family values continued with the help and understanding and hard work of Eileen and their son Scott, joining in and working countless hours. Whereas for over 56 years, Brown's Root Beer has been a part of many sweethearts' first dates, car shows, cruises, graduations, parades, Little League victory parties, and countless other community events. And whereas the Brown family has always supported numerous charitable causes, with Ed always putting out the first jar anytime a family had a special need or had a crisis. And whereas Brown's Root Beer has been the first job for countless teenagers and adults, all of whom have maintained lifelong friendships and are treated as family. And whereas it is truly an honor to recognize Brown's Root Beer and the entire Brown family, a family and business that has continually supported local organizations, taken pride in the community, and demonstrates the family's true commitment as a good citizen of City of South Lyon. Now, therefore, let it be resolved that I, Michael J. Gingell, Chairman of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, together with Commissioner Philip J. Weipert, hereby commend and congratulate Ed and Eileen Brown on their well-deserved retirement. We wish them the very best in all future endeavors and safe travels on all their future retirement trips.
Thank you, Phil.
Attested to.
Thank you again. It's unbelievable the outpour I've had. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope the rest of the meeting is that fun.
You might want to go.
Okay, under old business, fiscal year 16-17 first quarter budget amendment.
All right, this item was tabled from last meeting as I was not here, and there was some questions about it. The line item for this, 101-200-974-100, is increasing from $500, which was the original budget, to $18,500. This is covering the expenditure for the windows at the South Lyon Area Rec Authority building at 318 Lake Street that was approved by the council. Those windows should be installed in the next few weeks. The total expenditure for the windows was $18,000.92, which is why we're only increasing it from $500 to $18,500, because we were anticipating maybe $500 to spend on the rental properties there this year, and we don't have any other planned expenses, especially not major expenses there.
Yes, my comment is that you did a much better job on the explanation this time. Is that I think it's really important that when you are going for the budget amendments, to actually state what the actual amendment is. Because for me, the way it read was that the increase was actually 18.5, and that's how I was getting to the 19,000. So you've done a good job clearing up that confusion by delineating exactly what the actual amendment is so that you understand that there's a carryover going over. So thank you for clearing that up.
I apologize for the confusion.
Oh, these things happen. Thank you. I make a motion to approve the fiscal 2016-17 quarterly budget amendment as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Under all business, consider second reading of an ordinance to amend the City of South Lyon Code of Ordinances, Chapter 22, businesses by amending Article 1 in general to Article 1, business registration, and adding sections 22-1 through 22-5.
Okay, this is off of the changes that we're making to the fee schedule. Once this is approved or not, I will be bringing at the next meeting the revised fee schedule for the council to approve. It's also been completely reformatted, so it will be easier for people to read. But the changes on this from last time is the references to township were removed, which you can see in the red line copy, which you should have in your packet as well. And section 22-5 regarding the fee was deleted based on the language in section 22-58, as the council was not planning on charging a fee for this. And those are the changes from the first reading to the second reading.
On page 2, the section 22.4, after the red line, it still has fee is paid. No business registration shall be issued until the fee is paid and all required information is submitted. If there's no fee, what are we leaving that language in there for?
We can delete it. It would be, no business registration shall be issued until all required information is submitted.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure, has the business community had an opportunity for input on this? I mean, this is not an emergency kind of thing that needs to be done. Has the DDA looked at it? Has the chamber looked at it? Has it been circulated in the business community at all for their input?
No, this was something that the council said that they were interested in doing, just so that we knew what businesses there were in town when we discussed the fee schedule. In order to do it, we needed to create an ordinance. Went out and looked at other communities that had one that had a fee. Obviously, we didn't want to charge a fee. Created language that met that. Were able to find forms that gave us basic information, most importantly about things like fire safety, alarm systems that we would want to know from a police standpoint and from a fire standpoint, if there's an emergency in the building, that type of thing, as well as the owners who we would contact if something happened at the building, that type of thing, which is really all the information that we're wanting to collect. You know, if something happens at a business, who do we contact? Especially if it's a new business in town that's just opening up and they haven't come into City Hall and made those connections, or if they haven't made a connection with our public safety department.
Well, I just want to make sure that and maybe this is the discussion, that the business community understands that this is now coming into play. So I take it that if I'm the owner of Pete's Hardware Store and I own Pete's Hardware Store, and I sell it to Kathy, then because there is a change of ownership, Kathy will need to come in and re-register with the city.
Yes.
Okay, so anybody out there that owns a business and you're selling it, your new owner needs to come in and get the records updated. The other thing is, if I'm a landlord of a shopping center like Brian Najor is, and I want to rent space, do I come to you first and say I have a potential tenant that I would like to lease space to and let you know what it is? Or can that be done after the landlord enters into the lease and says, oh, by the way, you know, Julie's Pizza, you need to go to the city hall and register the business?
It would be done after the space is rented.
Okay, so landlords need to comply with this. Does this include all businesses in the city or just the downtown? Does this include up and down Pontiac Trail?
All businesses in the city except, and it would apply even to home occupation businesses, because we already have a home occupation requirement that they fill out and get a home occupation registration. So that's separate, but it would also apply to home occupations.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're kind of clear on.
And the idea is that obviously we have our economic development DDA director that will go out and talk to all of our businesses and be making sure that they're aware of this, helping them fill out the information, make sure they understand that there's no fee, that this is just an informational thing for the city so that we have the public safety information that we need.
This would be something I would definitely put on the website.
It is.
Is it? Okay.
It
You have
will
it on
be.
there now?
Not yet, because until we pass it, we don't want to,
But the form will go on there?
yes, the forms
Okay.
will go on there.
Okay. Thank you.
I had one other thing, the change of use in a business, that's very important for us to be able to be aware of in the event that it has some implications for fire and even water. I mean, the tap-in fees, you know, a salon goes in, is the existing facility tap fee appropriate for what the usage is? The other thing I was kind of concerned is have you laid out any kind of plan to get existing businesses to participate? I mean, are we going to notify them? Are we going to do mailers to them so that they can mail it right back to us? I mean, this has obviously got to be attended to.
We will be notifying them, and I will be working with Bob so that as he goes out and does his business visits, he will be taking the registration forms with them, and as he meets with the business owners, he can have that conversation with them, help them to fill it out.
Okay, well, as I mentioned at our last go-around with this, the language in here speaks to 5 days after somebody starts a business. Obviously, we're not going to be inundated with every business that takes place in here, but is there a projection of how long it'll take to be able to touch base with everybody that's got a business in town?
The current businesses, based on the number that we have, and to get full compliance, I would say 6 months.
Okay. I don't have any heartburn about that. I just wondered if it had been forecasted already. So, all right. Thank you.
On the website, when you put that on there, I mean, I feel like it should be highlighted somewhat, you know, like under new businesses or whatever, they're like, because it's not requiring a fee, but it's requiring a participation from the business owners in order just to show, like Mr. Kibble said, you know, what's the intent of the business so we understand. You know,
I'm also working with the new website development so that people will be able to submit forms such as this electronically so that it comes in and they don't have to mail them in or hand bring them in, that they can just fill them out online and submit them.
Do we have storage capacity for all this new additional traffic that's going to be coming online?
That would be going through, they would come in through an email, so we would have the capacity for that, yes.
But I mean, we're going to have to cache all this stuff once it comes here, though. So we'll have to be able to store it.
Yeah, we have,
track it.
we currently do. Our IT company has recommended that in 2017 we update our server because it's almost 10 years old, but we'll be forecasting that in the 2017 budget.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I mean, that and all the FOIA stuff, you know, we're going to have our hands full with storage, so.
Correct.
Well, I'll make the motion then that we approve the second reading of of Article 1, Chapter 22 in general to Article 1, Business Registration, and the addition of sections 22-1 through 22-5.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, Lynn. So under new business, 1A go first or go second?
1A goes second.
Okay.
We'll have the auditors go first.
Presentation, the fiscal year 2015-2016 fiscal year audit, Plant Moran.
Good evening. I must say I've done a lot of council presentations, and I've only had bands come into them twice now. They were excellent. Mayor, City Council members, thanks for the opportunity to come tonight to present to you the audit results for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016. I'd like to, before I get started, like to thank the city staff who assisted us during the audit this year. City Manager Ladner, City Accountant Mosher, who's here, City Treasurer Deaton, Chief Collins, and all really the departments and departmental staff who cooperated with us, because we can be a little bit of a pain in the neck while we're out here, and we appreciate their cooperation and their readiness. You might think that we just come out at the end of the year and do an audit, but we actually are in communication with the city manager and city accountant throughout the year, really to get updates on what's going on at the city, have discussions around is there anything that impacts the accounting for the city, if there's any new pronouncements or things that impact the financial statements for the city, we have those discussions as well. So when we come out toward the end of the year and get ready for the initial planning, things are already on the table that have happened during the year. We don't have to really start to go through with that and start the planning process at that point in time. And we think that leads to a better executed engagement both for our Plant Moran staff as well as with the city staff. So thank you for your assistance. I have with me tonight Mr. Keith Szymanski and Mr. Spencer Tawa. They helped me during the year and also at the end of the year for the audit engagement, and they're really an integral part of that engagement. They're going to do part of the presentation tonight as well. If Keith seems a little tired, he's a brand new dad, so he hasn't been getting a lot of sleep recently, so if you bear with him tonight, I'd appreciate that. One thing I wanted to mention is that before Spencer comes up to walk through some of the higher level graphs is we did issue an opinion on a financial statement that's really the only part of the financial statements that belongs to Plant Moran. And our opinion is an unmodified opinion. They used to be called unqualified opinions, but it's an unmodified opinion. And what that says is that we found the financial statements to be materially correct for the city for the year ended June 30 of 2016. That really is what the bond rating companies are looking for. They're looking for those unqualified opinions. That is the highest form of assurance that you can receive from a third-party independent CPA firm. So I wanted to let you know that you did receive that again this year. I'm going to have Spencer come up and go through the graphs. Keith's going to walk through the letter. So there's three things in your packet. There's the financial statements, there's a letter to the council, and then there's the graphs. And so Spencer's going to walk through the graphs and some higher level information. Keith is going to walk through the letter, which are some of the required communications that we are to have with council, as well as some recommendations. And then I'd like to come back up and have one discussion around a higher level recommendation that I think would be very important for the city to consider going forward with respect to financial forecasting. So with that, I'm going to have Spencer come up and we'll get started.
Okay, good evening. I'm just going to get the graph set up. So as Doug said, I'm going to go over the financial results, and instead of going over the entire financial statements, we have put it in a graph format with a trend analysis so you can kind of see the comparison to prior years. There's going to be a couple things I do want to talk about in the statements, but that's towards the end, and I'll let you know what page to go to. So we can start at the first page, and the presentation is not currently working, but you guys have it in front of you. So we're going to start with the general fund revenue trend. And you could see from 2015 to 2016, the revenue did jump up to about $370,000. And one of the main reasons was your primary source of revenue, which is property taxes, and that went up about $300,000 or $400,000. And two reasons for this: one, the general fund was allocated a little bit more of the millage. And number two, your taxable value did increase from 2014's L4029. So we have seen a steady increase in that taxable value, and I believe next year it's projected to increase as well. Your second biggest source is the state and federal sources, and of the $931 $908,000 is your state shared revenue. So if you go to the next page, we actually have a graph on the revenue sharing history. So what this graph shows is since 2001, the changes in the state shared revenue. And in 2001, it was about a little over $1 million that you got in the state shared revenue. Since 2001, as you can see in the orange, that's your actual state shared revenue that you received. It's been decreasing to all the way a low of $700,000 in 2010, and then now it's been steadily increasing. Even so, in 2016, you're looking at you got $900,000 compared to the $1 million back in 2001. So cumulatively, since 2001, if 2001 amount stayed the same, the $1 million, you have actually received about $3 million more than you actually did receive if it had stayed consistent from 2001. But again, it decreased. Moving on to the next page is the general fund expenditures. And what you could see is that the general fund expenditures did increase significantly this year, over $900,000. And one of the big things that happened during the year was the purchase of the fire truck. In addition to the fire truck, there was a couple other capital improvements that caused this amount to increase. Moving on to the next page, what this graph shows is a comparison of your annual expenditures to your fund balance. And what the unassigned fund balance is the cumulative revenue in excess of cumulative expenditures that the city has. So at the end of 2016, you're at about $2.7 million in unassigned fund balance as compared to expenditures of 5.7. So you could see from 2015, it did decrease from 3.3 million down to 2.7 million, and the reason was your expenditures exceeded your revenue, but you guys had enough fund balance to cover that. And again, as we talked about, one of the big expenditures this year was the fire truck. Moving on to the next page. So when we were talking about the general fund, we present that in accounting as a modified accrual, and it's a current resources. So no long-term assets such as capital assets are shown on that, or long-term debt, so or long-term liabilities such as debt and then like the net pension liability. What you do have is a government-wide net position, and what that is, that shows your long-term perspective. So that includes your capital assets, that includes your net pension liability, your long-term debt as well. So within that, there's three different fund balances. There is unrestricted, which the city is not restricted in how to use that funds. You have restricted, which the funds are restricted for a specific purpose, such as Act 51 money that you receive for roads. Those are restricted specifically for road improvements, road construction. And then you have another aspect, which is invested in capital assets, and that's your capital assets that the city currently has. So in total, your government-wide net position is $23.5 million. So moving on to the other funds, we have the water and sewer fund. And what you could see is from 2015 to 2016, your revenue did increase by about $100,000, so it went from $3.5 million to $3.6 million. And part of that is, as well, property taxes. With the taxable values increasing, so did the property taxes. And then your expenditures did decrease from 4.2 to 4 million. And what this is showing is your operating revenue, including property taxes that we've included here, and then your operating expenses. And we've excluded depreciation, but we've added capital improvements and debt service. So even though your revenue did increase this year, and then your expenditures did decrease, your operating revenue is still not enough to cover the operating expenditures. And so part of that is the city needs to consider, water rates, the water rates you're doing, as well as the debt millage, which we're aware of. The debt millage did increase from 2.5 to 3.3 for next year. So that'll help bridge that gap between the operating revenue versus the operating expenditures. All right, so that concludes the graphs, but I did want to show you one item in the financial statement. So if you can go to page 48. And so this was hard to put in a graph presentation, so we kind of just will point it out. But these are your other, what we call non-major funds. So these are just like the general fund. They're on the modified accrual basis, so you won't see any long-term assets included with these or any debt or long-term liabilities. But you could see here's where your major roads are, your cemetery and CDBG building fund, they're separated out if you look at the top by special revenue funds. That's, revenue that you're getting that's going to be restricted for a specific purpose. So like we talked about, major roads and local roads, those will have, they receive Act 51 money that are restricted for road improvements. And then you have your debt service fund, which is your building authority fund. And then on the next page, on 49, you'll have your capital projects funds, and those are for capital improvements. And again, those are committed money towards capital improvements. So that concludes the presentation on the financial statements. Keith is now going to present on the letter.
Good evening. I'm going to briefly walk you through the 3 sections of the letter addressed to the mayor and members of council. The first 2 sections are required by the auditing standards, and the third one are recommendations and legislative items we thought would be of significance to you. In section 1 on page 3 is where we would disclose any internal control related matters that we think are significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we're required to bring to your attention. We have just one item this year, recognizing the increased use of online banking throughout essentially all of our clients across many industries. We took a much closer look at the internal controls related to online banking this year at the city, and we did find one opportunity for improvement in internal controls. On the face of the matter, there are strong controls requiring dual approvals for wire transfers. Both the city treasurer and the bookkeeper must approve any wire transfers before the money is sent. However, as we dug a little bit deeper, we recognized that both also have administrative access to the banking system. So based on our understanding, each one of them has the ability to also create new users and assign them the ability to initiate or approve transfers. So essentially, although there's no evidence any of it took place, it gives them the opportunity to override controls. So we have a recommendation to remove that administrative access from the individuals involved in initiating and improving transfers. And it's our understanding the city is already in the process of working with the bank to correct that. And we would expect this item to disappear for next year. In section 2, there are several boilerplate pieces of information that the auditing standards require us to address. Essentially reporting any deficiencies or deviations from our audit plan that we disclosed to you at the beginning of the audit. There is just one paragraph in this entire section that's unique or includes any deviations from the plan, and that's at the top of page 5 where we disclose the most significant estimates in the financial statements. We list 3 of them: the unbilled water and sewer receivable, as well as the disclosures and numbers related to the pension plan and the retiree health care plan. We evaluated the assumptions and the methodology used to calculate those estimates, and we found them to be fair, which allowed us to give the unmodified opinion on the financial statements. However, because they're not based on actual numbers and they can't be verified by invoices or a bank account, we do want to disclose to you that those are significant estimates included in the financial statements. Finally, in section 3, on page 6 and at the top of page 7, we have several recommendations for you. These are just items for you to take under advisement. It's up to management and city council to determine whether or not the benefits outweigh the costs on these items, but we present them to you as opportunities for improvements and efficiencies and internal controls. And then finally on page 7, we talk about a new upcoming accounting standards that's effective 2 years from now, which will require the city to report on a full accrual basis its obligation for retiree health care. Currently that's just a footnote disclosure. In about 2 years, that unfunded liability will be placed on government-wide statements. So we'll have no impact on your budget or the general fund, but on those government-wide statements where we placed the net pension liability a year ago, we'll be placing the retiree health care obligation in 2 years. And that number, as of right now, is about $800,000. And then finally, under Public Act 298 of 2012, we talk about Act 51 performance audits, which this state is requiring all recipients of Act 51 money to receive over the next year. So we will be performing additional procedures when we're out here next year and issue a separate report on your compliance with Act 51. But assuming the city continues to comply with the Act, there should be no issues with that performance audit. With that, I'll hand it back over to Doug.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Have you guys forecasted what the cost of that audit for Act 51 might be?
We're projecting between $2,500 and $4,000 right now. So we haven't done any yet, and we'll probably be refining that over the next year, but that's our best estimate right now.
Okay. I did want to ask you more about this positive pay.
Sure.
At the top of that page as well. Just, could you get a little bit more specific than, I mean, this is very general, so.
Essentially how it works is when the city runs a cash disbursement or a check run, you could download a file with key information, including the check numbers, the amount of the check, and the payee, and send that to the bank, and they would be required to match that amount when the check is presented for payment. And if there's not a match, it's up to the city what type of controls to put in, whether or not you disallow the payment altogether, or whether or not you have a day to sort of go back and check it. But if there are any deviations when the check's presented, it would be quickly emailed to the city and give them an opportunity to follow up on it. So should there be a manipulation of a check, that would be a great way to catch it almost instantaneously.
Right, but the banks are obligated to respond.
If they offer that program and you participate in it, they would be required to bring those to your attention.
Well, that'll be internal then. Thank you.
Mike?
How deep did you dig into the assumptions and key factors used by MERS as far as our pension obligation? I mean, did you just look at what method they were using to see if it was appropriate, or did you actually look at the numbers that they provided to us, I think, what, about a year ago? I'm not sure.
All of that.
Yeah, just to see, because their projection, we're trying to figure out if their projection is accurate as
Sure.
far as our deficit or what we're in the hole for.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that maybe we had somebody else look at that number to see if it's actually a valid number as opposed to a number that they're giving us, so that we have to take a hard look at how we can get out of it.
There are two key pieces that go into calculating the net pension liability, which is essentially your unfunded obligation for pensions. The net position portion is the actual assets that you have on hand at MERS at a particular point. So that's very easy to verify.
Okay.
The piece that's much more subject to assumptions and estimates is the liability estimate. And that includes how long retirees are expected to live and collect benefits, the assumed rate of return on investments that are invested with MERS, as well as several other factors, pay increases and such. We take a close look at all of the assumptions. We have documentation in our audit file supporting each one of them. However, even though we're opining on them and finding the assumptions to be reasonable, they're guaranteed not to be exactly correct. So even though we have a number to the dollar for your net pension liability disclosed, it's certain to vary from that to some degree based on how the actual results compare to the estimates.
Was that based on your independent review of what they gave you versus what they gave us? Meaning that you took a look, well, I'm trying to get an understanding of what our unfunded portion may be. And I just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples, what they're telling us and what somebody else is saying.
We're not able to rerun all the numbers given the assumptions, but assuming they're taking the assumptions that they're telling us, which we are auditing, we have verified their calculation for it. One thing I will point out, on page 39 in the financial statements, one of the changes as of a year ago with some recent accounting pronouncements was a disclosure of the sensitivity of your net pension liability given changes in the assumed rate of return. So at the bottom of page 39, the current discount rate of 8% results in a liability of $5.3 million. You can see what a 1% swing will do in the assumed rate of return. So should you actually earn 9% on those investments, the liability would be about $1.5 million lower. Similarly, it'd be over $7 million if the investments earn only 7%. So that's one way for you to evaluate, if you have your own opinion of what the assumed rate of return should be, how much it will vary from the 8% that MERS uses.
Lynn, we have no input into the investments, right, that MERS
Correct.
is making? They decide where it's going to go and the return?
Correct.
Took some of your stuff, maybe.
It's a rigged game.
And you'll notice that our pension liability went up this year because MERS made drastic changes in their actuarial assumptions and their investment assumptions. So if you look at the pension liability from the 15 audit to the 16 audit, the pension liability increased because they have changed what they think people are going to, how long people are going to live, and they have reduced the rate of return that they believe they're making on their investment long-term. So everyone statewide pension liability has actually significantly increased.
So what's our current?
The current is what's in here,
Okay.
but it is more than it was a year ago.
If I could add a little bit more to that, the details are on the top of page 37. So that table shows the two pieces I mentioned, the total pension liability as well as the planned net position. The net position being the assets, the liability being the estimate for future benefit payments. And you can see sort of in the middle of that table, changes in assumptions was a $700,000 increase in the liability. So without considering any other factors, just over the last year by MERS adjusting those assumptions, it added $700,000 to the liability. In the end, it's not going to change the actual dollars that get paid to retirees, but it is tweaking their estimate of what that is as of today.
Well, the problem is it affects our ability to, if
Right.
we want to change
We're
our
handcuffed.
investment, right,
Yeah.
to get out of MERS, it affects the amount of money that we're going to have to come up with to get out of it,
Right.
which we have no control over as far as how.
Everyone uses the same assumptions.
Maggie?
I have questions, and Doug, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to start with page 3, and it's the financial highlight. It said expenditures exceeded revenue in the general fund, thus decreasing the fund balance by approximately $606. That was higher than the final amended budget, which expected a decrease of approximately $588. So the discrepancy between the two was about $180,000. So I'm not quite sure how reliable these numbers are that we're getting if this kind of variance is popping up. I mean, I guess I'm looking for an explanation as to how we can look at a final amended budget that tells us 588, and then you come in and audit and it's now 606. How does this happen? Why? I'm just trying to understand how this happens. And that's a big swing.
Well, I'm not sure I'd agree. It's a significant swing. There's always going to be variances between what you budget and what actually takes place. Typically, revenues are budgeted somewhat conservatively. And when you budget expenditures, that should be viewed as a legal maximum. It would be technically in violation of the State Budget Act for you to spend more than what was budgeted from an expenditure perspective. So assuming the city follows the Budget Act and complies with that, expenditures will always be less than what was budgeted. So the budget's not a prediction of exactly what's going to take place. From an expenditure side, it's the legal maximum that the city can spend during the year.
But you have something budgeted, you have an expenditure, and we exceeded that. This, not only by the 606, but I mean this discrepancy of 180.
The main differences are in the projection for revenues, and that's you can see some of the detail on page 42 of the financial statements. Property taxes were $143,000 less than was budgeted, and state shared revenue and other grants was $45,000 less.
So are you saying then that when I look at a budget in March and I am given projected revenues, I can't rely on those numbers? I need to drop those numbers down by maybe 10 or 20%, because from here, what you're saying is the revenues were not matching the expenditures. So now I have to go back and say, you're forecasting too high. You need to drop the revenue down and then start working with expenditures.
Potentially, there are things you can do throughout the year. The city collects most of its taxes in the summer, so if that's a concern of yours, I'd advise you to ask the city to take a look at what they were prior to the end of March. Similarly, state shared revenue, those projections are updated on the state website at various times throughout the year. So by the end of March, once you're 75% of the way through the year, you've already known what you're getting for several of the months, and the last two payments would be projected on the state website.
So I'm trying to understand if this is a forecasting problem in the budgeting process. if it's a forecasting problem in the budgeting process, and the forecasting issue is coming on the revenue side, then we need to do a better job of understanding and being more careful about those revenue projections.
Generally speaking, I'd advise the city to take a look at those on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, that's, okay. And again, I noticed in here, the total general fund revenue was $219,000 less than the amended budget, primarily due to lower anticipated property revenue. So once again, we're dealing with a forecast issue. So I kind of want to narrow this down so I understand where the issues are coming from. I'm on page 16, and this is proprietary fund, water and sewer, statement of revenue and expenses. Explain to me the operating loss, the 947, 986.
It's essentially the difference between the operating revenues, mostly consisting of charges for water and sewer, against the operating expenses, essentially the cost of providing the services, which includes depreciation on capital assets. So the last line of operating expenses is a $1.4 million book entry for depreciation of assets. So on an operating basis, including the depreciation, there was an operating loss of $950,000. If you throw out the depreciation, it'd be an operating gain of $500,000. It's also worth pointing out that somewhat unique for a local area of government is that you have significant non-operating revenues. The property tax revenue used to pay debt. So that $823,000 of non-operating revenue is offset just by the interest expense. So you have positive non-operating items of more than $500,000, as well as capital contributions. So the overall change in net position, once that operating loss is dwindled down, is a loss of $236,000.
But it's still, okay, that's the change in the net position.
Yes.
Okay, so is the conclusion that the sewer and water department is operating at a loss?
Yes.
And that's why we have increased the sewer fees.
You can help with that too on water and sewer. So on the water and sewer side, you really have two ways to fund the cash flow for the water and sewer operations. One is certainly through rates, and secondly, you do have the ability to have this debt millage, which can help pay the debt service on the bonds. And so to me, it's a combination of those two are going to lead to the revenue sources. That has to be sufficient to cover your cost of operations. And so in any one year, could you have a little bit of a shortfall, a little bit of a windfall? You can. But over time, and this is part of the conversation I wanted to have once Keith was you really do need to look at forecasting in total for the city. And I would recommend that you do that over a 3 to 5 year time frame. It absolutely needs to include water and sewer. And what it will do is it'll help to figure out what are the cash needs of the city. And will be important part of that will be one, certainly your property tax revenue and making sure that the projections make sense for that because that's continuing to grow. We allocate the millage here, so that's a little bit different within our charter in terms of how we share those dollars, so to speak. And so I think the forecast can help with that and also will dovetail with your budgeting, your water and sewer rate. There should be a water and sewer rate study that supports the rates that are there. That'll go hand in hand with what your millage levy is for the debt. It'll also help for your capital improvements. So most communities would have a 3 to 5 year rolling forecast of capital improvement needs. You have special revenue funds that are set up for that, your equipment fund, your land fund, to help fund some of those, your capital improvement fund. So that would roll into the forecast. And that way you can really then plan out over a multi-year period, both to help with the budgeting process, but maybe as important or more importantly, your cash flow needs to kind of see where we're going to end up. And part of that, to Michael's point earlier, are these legacy liabilities. And so we do have a pension plan that's out there. It's about 63% funded as of end of December 31st of 2015. And you also have an unfunded OPEB obligation, not a large one relative to most communities, but that's out there as well. And that should be part of that forecasting model to see, are we going to have sufficient cash flows here to support the future needs and obligations that we're going to have for the community. And I think if you do that, it'll answer a number of the questions that have been asked tonight around that, because really the concern is, can we afford it? That's really the bottom line question. And so I think the forecasting can really help you figure out where you're at, where you're headed, and what are the resources that you're going to need to support the current obligations and future obligations.
I'm going to go back to the water and sewer. Now that we know that we have an operating loss of 236 over there. How do I know where that operating loss is coming from? Is it coming from the water department side or the sewer side? Because you're working with consolidated statements here. And I guess I don't understand why there are consolidated statements. I mean, I just need to understand why, because if I am trying to fix this problem, do I fix it from the water side or the sewer side? I think it's just an easy answer to say, well, raise water rates and raise sewer rates and we'll see where the money falls. But if there's a problem somewhere, why aren't we honing in on it and fixing it? So, and I can't do that when you're working with consolidated statements from both departments. What is your thoughts, suggestions?
It's a fair question. There is some more detailed information that breaks down the water and sewer further in the back of the statements, but you do have a combined water and sewer fund system here in South Lyon. Many communities have them both combined. There are some that have them separate as well. And so here, because you're 82% roughly is residential here, your water and your sewer customers don't change dramatically other than your large plant that you have here that has a kind of a different rate structure. But whether you make it up in water rates or sewer rates maybe isn't as critical because it's a common customer. If you had a lot of uncommon customers that were only having water, only having sewer, it becomes more critical in those instances. So it would be nice to have those different operations separated and have the exact, this is what it's costing to run sewer, this is what it's costing to run water. I don't know if we have that level of detail at the city, but on a combined basis, you can still build that into the rates to help then support the operations.
Did you take into account, we just raised rates?
No, because the audit was for.
Those are effective for
Well, I
July,
know, but I'm talking
July
about,
16.
I understand we're operating right now with a deficit. I think we just raised rates going forward.
Right, as soon as you adopt the revised fee schedule, because when we went over everything, it was too late to put it on the October bill, so it wouldn't have gone into effect for that, because the bills had already gone out.
My water bill that just came did not include the rate?
No, because they were already calculated.
Explain to my wife.
Jeez, that was kind of high.
Because those were based on your summer months, June, July, or
Peak usage.
They were
your
May,
peak
June,
usage,
July.
so
For a while.
that wouldn't have been on this bill anyhow. So the rate increase for sewer will be on the next bill.
Okay, sorry, thanks.
But I think the question around rate increases, if you have that multi-year forecast in place, you can, if a larger rate increase is needed, you can adopt that immediately. Most communities, when they see a larger increase is needed for whatever reason that caused that, they will look over maybe a 3-year period to try and work it in each year, so it's
I
not
thought
one
we
large
did that.
increase in a given year.
Yeah, it's a 3-year rate increase.
Okay,
4 years in a row at 6%.
but when's that,
The last one went into place this summer for the DWRF,
Okay,
for
all
the
right.
water side.
okay, all right, thanks.
When, as you know, the bonds for the sewer plant, the mill had not been changed in, I don't know, 8 years, 9 years, or whatever. Various reasons were given why it wasn't done, and it was inappropriate not to have been done. So now the rate is, the mill is where we think it should be
To cover debt service.
to cover the debt servicing. Where was the money coming from prior to that change?
Rates. And again, with debt service for water and sewer funds, you can fund the debt service for water and sewer funds via rates, or in this case, based on how these bonds were let through a special millage to do that. Both are allowable. And we have some communities that do it via the millage. We have some that do it through rates. And here it's a combination.
Yeah, but if you're not raising the mill to service the debt, then what you're doing is you're risking your operations for your sewer and water, that you're draining the funds in order to keep them, so that you don't have this operating loss.
You're definitely paying the debt service via the rates, correct. So it's not available to
Okay.
fund the operations.
That's right, that's right. It shouldn't be there. Okay. My next is on page 18. On page 18, you speak about an economic development corporation. Now, the city ordinance does have reference to an economic development corporation. I believe there was one here back in the 70s, 80s, maybe the 90s or whatever. The reason that there is no activity during the fiscal year ended June 30th of 2016, the corporation, my understanding is, it has been dissolved for over a decade. It doesn't exist.
Okay, that would not have been our understanding. We thought it was dormant. We didn't believe it to be dissolved. If that's the
I
case,
think
then
it
this
might-
disclosure can be removed if that's the case.
Well, somebody may want to check into that. My research showed that it could have been dissolved. I think it was there to take care of activities that the county ended up, when I called up there.
Most city EDCs now are no longer active. At one point in time, there was a purpose for those, in particular with respect to bonding, but a lot of that has gone away now based on how the laws have changed. We can check and see on that with the city attorney.
I think I also wanted to comment on, I was very pleased with the report that was done, and I will say that I'm a little bit surprised about a couple things. This is in the letter that's addressed to the mayor and members of council. It's dated September 2nd. I didn't get it until my packet, so I don't know where it was for 4 weeks. But I was a little bit surprised that there was no limit on the wire transfers. I was surprised that there was no prudent investment done of the cash accounts. We've had low interest rates since 2009, so I'm surprised that there wasn't anything in here at all showing where money had been moved into the bond market. But whatever. I was also surprised that cash payments were not consistently cashed out at the end of the business day. I mean, that's kind of basic stuff. I was a little bothered by the letter, and I just want to thank you for your job, because it provides some insight, tremendous insight into some of the budgeting issues, financial control issues that are seriously lacking in the city.
With respect to the investment returns, we are seeing a number of communities now investing through Oakland County and their pooled resources.
Their pooled service, yeah.
And because they've been suffering the same issue, the returns on, you're very limited, outside of pension funds, you're very limited on what you can invest funds in as a city by law. And so these funds that the county are getting, I don't want to quote the return because I may be wrong, it may have changed at this point, but that is one spot that I've seen that it still seems ridiculously low, but it's better than savings and checking account rates. So that's something to consider.
Well, and two, I mean, I can remember saying earlier in the spring, it was sort of beyond my comprehension why the fire truck was not leveraged. I mean, the interest rates are so low, it's like free cash. And that was one of the problems why expenditures, probably half of the reason why the expenditures exceeded revenues for 2016. You could have leveraged the doggone truck. It probably saved ourselves a lot. I don't get it. I don't understand the financial strategy of the city, and every time I peel back the onion, I find another issue. And you have just validated through this expenditure issue that we exceeded in 2016. That fire truck should have been leveraged, and I don't understand why it was not done when the leveraging was done with the DPW. But hey, thank you very much. You did a good job. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Okay, under new business, Lynn brought 1A.
They were here. Let me go see if they're out in the lobby.
agenda for this is the completion of the agreement, South Lyon Square.
Yes, this completion agreement is similar to the performance guarantee agreement that we met last week on for the Knowles development. The owner, Brian Najor, is here. Hopefully he can answer any questions you have. He is asking this evening for a help in the process, completing numerous improvements on the property in conjunction with the approval that was granted related to a special land use permit for one of the units at the center. The unit has been renovated to house a new tenant, which is the Salvation Army Thrift Store and Distribution Center. The tenant would like to begin occupying this space, which includes receiving fixtures, donations, stocking the store, and preparing for an opening in mid-November. This is not possible without a temporary certificate of occupancy. While the city wants to encourage business growth and development, we want to ensure the safety and security of residents and business visitors to our community. Having a new retail establishment in the city before a holiday season is a plus for the community, and it is necessary to ensure that the improvements that were agreed upon by the owner as part of the granting of the special land use are completed in a timely manner. The agreement requires that the owner submit an irrevocable letter of credit to the city for 150% of the cost of the remaining required improvements. It allows for a single reduction in the letter of credit after December 1 based on the totality of the items completed following an inspection, and all other items are required to be completed by May 1 of 2017. I do apologize for the lateness in getting this to you. We met with Mr. Najor, his attorney, and the contractor that is doing the work on Friday. We followed up with HRC today to make sure that the cost estimates were accurate, and City Attorney Tim Wilhelm was finishing drafting the agreement this afternoon, so I wasn't able to get this to you all before today.
Mayor Gales?
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm just a little surprised that we are getting this today. I mean, how long have we been talking about Salvation Army?
How long have we been talking
Yeah.
about Salvation Army? They received their special land use permit or approval from the Planning Commission in June. They approached the city for a certificate of occupancy on September 9th. Due to the fact that the conditions for the special land use had not been met at that time. We did not give them a certificate of occupancy, but I was in communications with the owner, his real estate broker, and attorney, trying to get the improvements completed so that Salvation Army could move in.
Well, I'm, excuse my frustration, but this is dated October 10th, and it's, I don't know, 30 pages here. So I'm not really sure I'm supposed to vote on something when I haven't even had a chance to read it.
Tim drafted the preliminary agreement on Friday. We met with them on Friday. Like I said, we followed up with HRC this morning because the meeting didn't get out until the end of the day on Friday. This was the earliest we could get this to you.
I agree with Joe. I'm not opposed to providing an opportunity to provide some accommodation. I just got this tonight, and I'm not going to read it at the table, so.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed to it. Who's the bank that's going to provide your irrevocable, is it an irrevocable letter of credit?
Yes, it will be an irrevocable letter of credit, and I have a couple different banks looking at providing that.
But you don't have one tonight?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do have the bank.
Who's the bank?
Level 1 bank. And I guess I would start out by saying, I share your frustration. I'm experiencing quite a bit of it myself. It has been a very lengthy process. We've been up several different meetings and many additional meetings that have been done administratively. We are finally getting to a point where the improvements are being made and things are moving in the right direction. So that's a positive step. It's taken a very long time to get here. So I would ask that, maybe we all think about, how much it's taken to get here, and we finally see some positive progress. And, we're doing our best to all achieve a common goal here, which is to facilitate a retailer, a new tenant, who is coming into the city and hopefully doing a nice job in their store and providing a nice service to the community. And we want to hopefully welcome them with open arms and do everything that we can to make it a successful store, while at the same time making sure that we're doing everything per the code and keeping in mind safety and some things that we discussed in our meeting, lighting and other things that we want to do to make sure that this is still a safe environment, and keeping in mind that we have to get all of these improvements complete. So again, apologies for this being thrown in your lap this quickly. I think more importantly than saying that we have to read this entire document, we would ask that we just, are we in agreement with the concept? And if we are in agreement with the concept, then maybe we move it forward based on the recommendations of the city manager and the city attorney, and at least that provides us a mechanism for getting this thing complete and hopefully getting a successful tenant in there. Time is of the essence due to the holiday season, and previous requests for a bond were not accepted or not entertained, and the fact that we've been allowed to even have this be a possibility is a positive step. So
Well, you haven't been very much of an advocate for your own needs. You had the special land use when? In September, right?
June. I think it was in June.
In June, okay. So, I mean, you had plenty of opportunity. You should have actually made these improvements and been finished with this by now.
I would agree with you.
Okay, so I mean, the idea that you're suggesting that we're dragging our feet because we want to actually read the document, I'm not really buying that. Personally, I'm
not suggesting anyone's dragging their feet. In order for the improvements to commence, we had to receive a written consent from the city to provide that to the tenant before we could begin the improvement. So there was still a time lag with the process and getting the minutes approved, and we didn't receive that approval till, I want to say, July or August. So I'm not trying to place blame anywhere.
But you were at the meetings that these discussions had been conducted, so you knew what your obligation was. So I'm not tracking why you didn't simply start fulfilling what your obligations were at that point, as opposed to waiting until you had the minutes published from meetings. I mean, that's kind of silly. I'd actually like us to just table this thing, give us the opportunity to read it, and come back at the next meeting.
John? I do have a little different perspective, and I want to maybe back up a little. When I said I was frustrated, it wasn't at you, Mr. Major. It was actually more in the city, because I tell you, I've spoken to countless people, and one of the first things they ask me is, when is Salvation Army coming? So there's definitely a need and a want for it to come here. Right. It's just a matter of when. So my frustration is not with you, it's with the city. Actually, one of the notes that I marked down for my council comments, I was going to save to the end, but I'll say it now, is that I'm very pleased to see that the parking lot's being done. I mean, before you look at that parking lot, it was a mess. It was horrible. So now we actually have a situation where we have a landlord, tenant, who wants to make improvements to the building, is making those improvements. Well, maybe you're off by, I don't know how many months or so, but you're making improvements. And one of I'm speaking for the comments that and feedback that I'm getting from the community, is that they would rather see, maybe not everybody wants a Salvation Army, but they'd rather see that building occupied than not occupied. So certainly my frustration is with maybe our city attorney, city manager, whoever that's not bringing this to us tonight. So I'm okay with
I would like to, I would like to defend them then, because they actually worked very quickly on this to turn it around, and I appreciate his efforts to try to make this happen. So I think it was more of an accommodation to us to get this thing done and turned around as quickly as they did, just because of the situation. So I don't think it's any fault in Lynn and Tim, and they certainly went a step above to try to get this done between Thursday of last week to.
Okay. And I think that's great feedback. So I guess my whole point is, conceptually, I like where you're going with the conceptual. I'm not going to feel comfortable voting on something tonight, but I do think we're heading in the right direction, and I would just ask that we work with you as much as possible to make sure that we have a smooth transition.
John? When did you tell the tenant that they'd be able to occupy their space?
Well, tentatively, we were trying to get them in there the day after Labor Day is what we were shooting for. So between some of the improvements that needed to be made to the exterior, in addition to all of the work that needed to be done in the interior, we were trying to phase the whole thing so it would fall in line correctly. Since September 6th, I basically have had the complete interior renovation done, which, a substantial amount of time, money, and effort was put into that to try to prepare it for them so that they could go through their fixturing period, which is a 60-day period. So we worked as quickly as we could to try to get that done, and I think we did. And we basically had a white box ready for them to take that since September 6th. But there were other improvements that needed to come online. For example, painting and landscaping, but.
What about the parking lot? I mean, you guys didn't start the parking lot until the last week in September. Right. And if you promised the tenant, or tentatively, that they were going to be in right after Labor Day, I mean, again, I understand there's delays, but there was a 3-week delay before you even started ripping out the parking lot after the tentative date for the tenant to come in. And that was one of the major.
It simply came down to one thing. In order for them to sign off and say that they were going to proceed with that agreement that they had entered into, they needed something in writing. I had to wait for the minutes to be published before I could go down that road. I couldn't begin the process of the parking lot and everything else until they knew they had an invite to be in there. In other words, if they need to have proof that the occupancy and the use is approved. I asked for a letter to give to them, and my response was that we don't provide that, and you're going to have to wait for the minutes of the meeting to be published. So I waited for a month, and then I waited for another month, and finally when I had the meeting minutes that were published, I sent them to the tenant, and the tenant said, okay, let's move forward, and that's what I did.
Just out of curiosity, did you let anyone from the city know that you need those minutes before waiting for 3 months?
Absolutely. On several occasions.
Okay, when did you let the city know?
I can't give dates. I can pull up emails, but we requested them at least 3 or 4 times.
Okay, but the question, I would like to see, or at least know when. I mean, if it's one thing you started in July.
2 weeks after the meeting, 4 weeks after the meeting, 6 weeks after the meeting, 2 months after the meeting. I mean, okay. We were anxious to get going, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would just like to point out, he never told us the deal was contingent upon needing the published minutes. He just said he needed a copy of the minutes. The Planning Commission had problems making a quorum this summer. If we'd known that the minutes were what was holding up the deal, we would have held a special meeting.
Okay.
For me, the minutes are not critical, and I'll tell you why. Because you came into the city and you purchased property at a discount. That's what you did. You did not pay top dollar for that property up there. I had a client that actually offered to purchase that property at a particular value, and it was rejected. So I know kind of what you probably paid for that property. Now, when you buy property that is vacant, abandoned, and blighted, and you expect to put tenants in there, you don't put the tenant in first. You fix the property first. So whether or not you got minutes for that to get your tenant in there, to me, is irrelevant. The issue is you purchase property, and if you're going to make a go of it, you have to improve the property. And I recall the Planning Commission setting some particular conditions on what needed to be done with that property when they gave you the special land use. So you either have the money to go in there and get that property up to snuff, and then you enter into your lease agreements, and then you start bringing in your tenants, or you don't. Because what is I am beginning to think, is that you need that tenant in there for cash flow in order to finish your other improvements. And I'm saying you're doing it wrong. You need to come in here, if you can get a line of credit, you have enough businesses out there, you develop throughout Oakland County, you've got property that sits on Woodward, do you not, are your offices? You know, why can't South Lyon have something nice like what you have over there on Woodward? That's all we're asking. Get the property up to snuff, and then you enter into your leases with your tenants. So I don't know why you're doing it backwards. You're finding the tenants first, and then coming to us and saying, I gotta hurry up and get them in, and you spent your money bumping out a piece of property when that money probably should have been spent taking care of the exterior, which is what was needed, which is why we gave you the special land use? I don't understand.
I don't have an answer for all of the issues that you raised. I can go through them one by one.
That's okay.
But I think that all I would be doing is creating a difference of opinion. I don't think that I think you have the right to your opinion. You're entitled to it. And, you know, I would say that we probably disagree on a lot of what you said. But that's neither here nor there. That's not why I'm standing up here. I'm not standing up here to say you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and you're wrong. I'm standing up here to say that we're in this position, and here's where we're at today.
The city didn't put you in this position. You put yourself in this position.
Okay, so
you went to a tenant.
I put myself in
You
this
went
position,
to a tenant and you said to the tenant,
and I'm
I have
standing
you.
here in front of you trying to remedy it.
Okay, but
Can you help me remedy the
not
position?
tonight. I'm telling, not tonight. I told you.
That's all I'm asking.
I don't have a
That's
problem.
why I'm standing up here.
I don't have a problem with the concept, but I have a problem with the fact that we are trying to get a tenant in there ASAP to generate cash flow for you, and we're stretching out improvements until when? May of 2000, is that what it is?
November 15th and November 30th. So November 15th, we're scheduled to have the parking lot done, and by November 30th, the landscaping will be in. So we're stretching out all of, 30 to 45 days.
That rear is painted already? Okay.
Yeah. The extent of the improvements that would push out to May of 15 would be if they're unable to do the top course of asphalt
Before the plant's closed.
before the plant's close, or if they need to put it off so that the base course can settle because they have completely redone the base course, put underground sprinkling, new storm drainage, everything like that in. Any landscaping that does not go in because of weather issues. The new monument sign, because that still has to go in front of the Planning Commission and be approved, and it has not, and that will not happen most likely before November 15 or November 30.
Can we at least put in front of you where we're at so that everybody is sort of up to speed with what's going on? Because again, one of the points you're making is that I haven't done anything. And
No.
I've done
No,
it.
it isn't.
No,
It's
that's
that
not
you
what we're
haven't
saying.
completed your obligations.
Nobody said you haven't
But-
done anything.
But I have completed a lot of the work there, and there is some work to be done, yes, but we're in the process of completing it, so let me at least get you up to speed where we're at, and,
If I could interrupt you for just a moment, though, the things that you were absolutely responsible for to be able to move to the next step are the things that you're here for. The things that, the parking lot, the landscaping, and things of that nature. So that is why that should have been a little bit more critical to your attention.
Right, but there's other items that we're only talking about the remainder of the items. So I've completed a lot of the items as well. We're talking about the balance of the items.
At the
But
back
those
of,
are the substantial ones.
at the back of your packet is a list of all the items that were required as part of the special land use, and the estimated cost is provided by Mr. Najor, as well as whether they've been completed and the estimated dates that he provided us.
I would also like to add just a couple of things, like small things. The monument sign, for example, we're talking about, it's a small item. It's a $5,000 to $7,000 item. That was a suggestion that I made. So that was something that I wanted to do for the shopping center. So I actually put that in. And, that's an item that's, it's still outstanding, I understand, but these are things that I wanted to do a monument sign. I wanted to even do more than that. But it's
But do you know sign ordinances and how that approval process,
Right.
I mean, it's never just show up and say, this is what I want to do, okay, go ahead, do it. I mean, that's a long negotiation.
But
so.
again, that was something that I suggested to them to improve the visibility of the shopping center and improve the situation for tenants in the center.
Well, it'd certainly be an advantage
Yeah,
to have a sign, that's for certain.
Okay, conceptually, I get, from what I read, I understand what's here in front of me, but I'm not comfortable signing this, or approving any of this tonight because it came to us too late for us to absorb. But instead of us going back and forth like this, I would like to hear what's going on and your end of it instead of us bantering here.
And I'm not asking you to.
I kind of would like to understand your side of it.
I would
and
love
where
to
we
give
stand.
it. And I'm not asking to approve this either. This is something that was put together because I wouldn't even be comfortable signing that agreement today. What I'm asking is that, can we at least agree on the mechanism and say, hey, this is something that we'll entertain? Posting up the bond to complete whatever the remaining balance of the improvements are.
Speaking of understanding where we are, my name is Richard Atto, I'm the contractor. There's no way that myself, Brian, or anybody that's in this kind of business would come to any council and say, we want you to give us permission to let a tenant move into a building with no parking lot. I mean, that would be foolish. There's the lighting's not sufficient, it's not even, doesn't make any business sense. Many tenants need or like to open certain periods of the year because they can't open a store during the holiday season, so they pick a date. So we know that the anticipated opening date was sometime towards the middle of November. There's no way in the world we expected a tenant to move in the middle of November and not have a parking lot. That would be foolish. What we tried to do, and by the way, this is not a normal tenant, retail tenant that picks up the phone if I'm a grocer and calls my local Spartan stores and say, hey, ship the trucks because we're going to open in a week. They needed a longer time period to set up. So coming in and asking for them to have the right to occupy the building, to get it ready so that when the parking lot was paved, they're ready to open. Didn't even think anything of that. It's done everywhere. I've never had a problem. People come in and they stock the building and they get it ready. Why would they want to wait till the site is 100% done and then lose 60 days while they're having people drop off donations all on the outside of the building? And dropping donations off on the outside of the building could have been done 4 weeks ago, or it could be done when the lot's paved. They'd still have access to the building. Would have been no problem whatsoever. So I was like, wait a minute. We don't want to open. We don't want the public to walk into the front door and not be safe and have issues with liabilities. We just want to get the store ready. We know what we have to do to get ready. We do it for a living. So it was just a simple, give us a temporary so they could take donations and get the store ready so that they could be doing all that while we're doing our work. And it was, you can't do that.
When were you contacted to start the parking lot?
Myself?
Yeah.
I don't have an exact date, but it was around July, maybe August.
Sure.
And then another point that I want to make, and I'll elaborate on that in a minute, is because had it not been for the Salvation Army, there was no special land use required. I don't need to go to the Planning Commission to replace a parking lot, but because it was a special land use, there was a few more conditions attached. I was a little bit surprised when I was told we have to go get engineering drawings. We pulverize and regrade and repave lots over and over again. I mean, Nagel Paving does, I don't want to say hundreds, but they do 10 or 15 or 20 a year. Nobody asks you to redesign the engineering when you're taking out asphalt and putting it back again. I've never had to do that ever before. So I was like, okay, you won't let the tenant stock for the 60 days or 70 days that it takes us to do the work. So now when the parking lot's finished, hey tenant, come on and open. We can't open, we don't have any merchandise. In the meantime, we had to go get the engineering done and then wait for HRC, which is our city's engineering consultant, to approve it. And I want to say that when they sent the letter and said it's approved, I think the lot was pulverized 3 days later. In the rain that we had, we worked in the rain to get the storm sewer done, to keep everything going. And like I said, like Brian said, having a bond to even place wasn't even an option. There's a document somewhere that says the city's not in the position or is not here to do site improvements. That was the answer.
I think the most important point he's making is that we're not asking for the tenant to be able to open their doors for business. All we were asking is for them to be able to work in conjunction with us to meet a deadline. So to say that every single item and everything has to be done and ready and turnkey, and then we can allow somebody to stock their store, or get in there and do what they need to do temporarily, you know, is it the right way? I mean, it's one way to do it, but I don't think it's absolutely the only way to do it. And
well, there had been a perception, though, of having to push the boulder uphill. So since you hadn't been very compliant with taking responsibility and getting things rolling on your own, we certainly weren't interested in exposing ourselves to having activities being conducted that didn't actually, like the temporary C of O.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, I'm sure you can understand this. You know, we're not trying to be mean or punish you. We simply aren't going to expose ourselves until you're complying with what your obligations are. That's what's driven us to where we're at.
Harvey.
Thank you. I'm curious, how are your current tenants getting along with the driveway, parking lot all pulverized?
they're ecstatic. I mean, they're happy. They've been there for a long time. They've seen this shopping center, you know, undergo a long period of.
How does a customer get in there?
We have pulverized the major phase, but we left the north lot. You know, customers coming on the north lot park. There's a little bit of parking on the west side, but mostly on the east side. We have the areas that are not drivable.
There's a dentist's office and a...
right around the building and park in the back. As a matter of fact, I got a phone call from the dentist 10:30 in the morning, and I have a patient coming in 2 hours, and we don't have, in a wheelchair, we don't have a ramp. An hour later, there was a ramp. Because, you know, they have to operate to it, and we want people to be safe, and that's what we're trying to do.
So they're not suffering from the lack of parking lot?
They're happy as can be because they're seeing the progress.
All right.
And you'll be happy too, because once it's graded and underground is done, things above ground start to show up, like curbs and a landscape island. Even with no landscaping, looks nice because you can see shapes and you can tell where the green belt's going to go.
I would point out, this was not simply a parking lot repaving and, you know, pulverizing and repaving. This parking lot is being completely reconstructed. There is new lighting, new islands, new curbing, and new surfacing.
New storm.
New storm drainage. So that is why engineering was required. And not because of the special land use particularly, but because the full weight and measure of all of the improvements that were being done to the parking lot to make sure that they were being done properly, to make sure they were done to city specifications was required. Not because of in any reason that it was something out of the ordinary, that they were just milling and overlaying a parking lot. This was a full reconstruction of a major shopping center parking lot.
That people with no money don't perform this kind of work. It's extensive.
But you're right. I mean, specs on lighting and things like that have changed since that was originally constructed, so.
All the lighting is going to be LED.
But I mean, height and, you know, how many lux per square foot and all that stuff, yeah.
Just want to know, in the agreement, it says that the, in paragraph 2, the performance bond posted is $439,500, but when you go to paragraph 3, the total performance guarantee is $570,750, so it's off about $131,000.
That was an oversight. It should be from the table. So that number in the table would jump up to paragraph 2. So the bottom line, total performance guarantee in 3 would jump up to that line in paragraph 2.
It's the 570.
That was an oversight on my part.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we get the total amount of the performance bond, and I don't want to sign a document or approve a document until I've seen the actual letter of credit issued.
I would agree with all that. So what I would ask, or what I would ask you to consider is, again, that document is not something that I would sign today. It's incorrect, and, you know, there's some things that need to be tweaked, probably on your side and probably on our side as well. So what I would ask is that we consider the mechanism until we can agree on what the numbers are, because there's so much work being done right now that the numbers are changing. In another week, that number could be cut in half, and literally in 2 weeks. So I wouldn't want to go post a bond for $570,000 when in 2 weeks that may change to, you know, $200,000. So we would like to work this thing and get it to the right, you know, stage of where it should be. And upon us agreeing on what the numbers are, and it would be a matter of just plugging that in. Obviously, that I would have to have the letter of credit provided before we sign the agreement or at the time of signing the agreement. And we would have to have, you know, an inspection at the site, maybe by Lynn or whomever, to say, here's where we're at in the process, and if we want to proceed with the bond, here's what it is.
Mr. Mayor?
So what you want now is for us to sort of approve this temporary thing on the condition that we'll work out the details later.
Yeah. He's asking for you to approve a temporary C of O.
That's what he wants tonight.
Tonight, without the performance bond.
No. I'm asking for.
No, he's asking if we like the concept.
I'm asking for, if the council is in favor of proceeding with the bond, then we will work out the details, and upon signing the bond, we would be able to obtain the temporary
Go the
C of
other
O.
way. If the council's position is, we're not asking for a C of O without a bond, please understand. The question is, we'll ask it in the reverse manner. Is the council's position, regardless of how good of a job you're going to do, or the fact that you went through, we don't care, we don't want to issue a bond, either you finish everything 100% or you don't have a tenant. If that's your position, please state it, because that's what he's asking for. Is the council's position that, you know what, this is something that we think we can work out, we can issue we're in a position to approve a bond if all the details are sufficiently documented and everybody's in agreement. Or, you know what, too bad, you guys should have done this 2 months ago. We don't care if the Salvation Army leaves. And by the way, asked a question one day that's about as polite a way as they could, and I stated this at the Planning Commission meeting and said, Are we welcome in this community? We want to know that.
That's not the issue.
That's not the issue.
No, the issue is, do you want to know if we're conceptually,
Do you think that there's a way that you would approve this mechanism in concept or not? We're not asking for a CO.
In concept, I personally, I can't speak for anybody else, in concept, I don't have a problem, but I'm not prepared tonight to say, go ahead, do your CFO, because you're gonna have a statute of frauds issue anyway, because you're dealing with real estate and it has to be in writing. So we can't approve it anyway, because you don't have anything in writing. It wouldn't be enforceable. So you could sit here and make all the promises you want, and we could say, go ahead and put your certificate, your temporary tenant in there, and nothing would be enforceable because.
No, I think the meeting was just specifically to discuss the concept and say, hey, is this something that we want to do or don't, you know, like he's asking.
I'm not resistant to the idea, I'll just put that out there, so.
That's great.
Mr. Mayor.
That's all we were here to do.
details, we
Mary,
need.
hold on, Mary is,
To ask this and to bring you guys up to speed on where everything's at and how things are progressing, and, you know, I think that I tried to start that we've made positive progress, everything's moving in the right direction. I think there's a certain level of comfort that I hope that the city has with me, and you know, I'm starting to get with them.
Gotta be more assertive.
I want to.
Nope, sorry, I just cut you off. Go ahead.
That's all right. So I just wanted to get to a certain point here where we can move the thing forward.
I didn't realize the mic was so loud. So sorry. Is it Brian?
Yes.
So Brian, you're bringing forth conceptual mechanism, and with the conceptual mechanism, I have no problem with it. It's not uncommon for businesses to set back their construction dates. I mean, there's delays, and that's totally normal with most businesses. In fact, for businesses to open up in a timely manner is actually not common. Usually dates are pushed back for new businesses. So with that being said, I have no problem whatsoever with this concept, posting the bond for all of the things you have in place. However, I do feel like this is particularly time sensitive because we're dealing with the Salvation Army. Around the holidays, the Salvation Army is huge, and I think it's important to open it around the holidays. So this is a time-sensitive issue, and the ball needs to get rolling. And it is frustrating that this is brought in front of us, and I know, Lynn and Tim, you guys have worked very hard on this. I mean, that's beside the point. It's just frustrating because we can't do anything with it being in our lap at this exact moment.
Understood.
So without having taken the time to review things, I won't hastily sign anything. I want to review it, take the time, do the research, and thoroughly examine it before I sign anything, which, again, I think we are all in agreement here. I can't speak for council, but it sounds like we're all in the general consensus.
We're all in agreement with that position because it's the right position.
But conceptually, yes, the mechanism that you're presenting, I'm all for it.
Thank you.
So I would like to see this brought during our next meeting, just kind of tied up loose ends and have it a little more concrete. Obviously, that'd be the next opportunity to vote on it, would be the next.
all the details worked out.
Absolutely. That's what I'm getting at. But I do have a question because it's not very often that we get to have both gentlemen in front of us. What are you going to do with the rest of the facility, and what are your plans? I mean, I can't be any more blunt than that.
Construction-wise, or?
Well, outside of the Salvation Army, I mean, there's a lot of other room in there, correct?
Quickly, as briefly as I can, once this section that we've pulverized and regraded and the curbs go in and gets paved, we're going to immediately go to the next phase because there's no underground or no concrete curbs in that phase. And while they're doing that, we immediately start the landscaping.
Okay.
So that'll be ongoing.
Something that has to go back in front of council.
Obviously, I think everybody knows that there's a future outline.
You can ask them whether they'll allow it to be an administrative.
But there is some leasing activity going on. Obviously, I'll let Ryan talk about it, but they want to see that anchor tenant. In this case, it's the Salvation Army because they are considered to be an anchor tenant, and they do have other tenants that follow. So once I get done with the lot and the landscaping, as soon as he does more leasing, he'll say, can you get this store ready or that store ready?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at, was I'm sure you have some sort of idea of what kind of.
Yeah, we have some prospects, and obviously some that I can't talk about and some that we can. Right now, I would say that we have a prospect for a daycare center that wants to go there. We have another prospect for an auto parts store. I've discussed in the past frozen yogurt. Another salon would like to go in there.
I'm sorry.
So
We have a lot of those.
Yeah, you're not bringing anything new to the city.
well, I mean, we can only do what we're doing and market the property and.
We have 3 auto supply stores. Have you been up Pontiac Trail?
We also have interest from a restaurant that wants to go in there that's looking for 3,000 to 3,500 feet. He's contemplating, beer, wine, liquor, a full-service sit-down restaurant, so that's another one.
I think something is better than nothing, though. It's rather better than having a vacant building.
Right.
No.
Thank you.
Vacant leases.
Well, you can't bring in a tenant that isn't going to survive. I mean, there's only so much competition than an auto store. You have 3 major auto stores on Pontiac Trail. You put in a 4th, and the survival of that auto supply store, unless they come in with dealership contracts, unless they come in with a built-in clientele base, their chances of succeeding, it's going to be rough.
Agreed. So there are some prospects, and again, right now we're focused on getting the center to where it needs to be and getting these guys up and open. I did want to ask, I still would like to go over the improvements and the time frame and everything else, but I would like to ask at this time if we could agree, and it seems like everybody's in agreement with the idea or the mechanism of posting a bond. What I would like to ask is that can we have this done administratively through Lynn and have her work on that and getting it done, as opposed to having a document, getting it here, bringing it in front of council. And I mean, again, the whole point of this was that time was of the essence. So to say that we would hammer out a document and come back here in 30 days, I think is what's
2
that?
weeks.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. It's time sensitive. So
Yep.
I'm looking at 2 weeks. I'm not.
2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not going to give that approval.
Yeah.
So
Glenn,
I want to see
Glenn, what's your thought?
what the actual things are.
I believe this is an agreement that Tim and I could work out if the council approved. If you feel that it is something that needs to come before the council, I am aware of the time-sensitive nature. If this does not get approved in the next few days, the tenant has stated that they will push out the open date until spring of 2017. And while that is not an issue of the city, it is something that will affect the retail climate of the city during the holiday season. And having this open before Christmas of 2016 would be of a benefit to the community. So if it is something that the council believes that they need to read through, approve of, and sign off on, I would ask them to consider a special meeting later this week.
I'm on board with that.
I'm all right with that.
I am too. I do want to state one thing, though. I mean, some of us have some real estate background, some of us have some building background. We've been doing this for a long time, too, maybe not in commercial. I haven't. Maggie's handled a lot of it as a lawyer. I've handled it in the industrial side. Glenn's done building. What frustrates me, I think, more is just the fluidity of the whole thing has been just since this thing started. And you can go to communities like Northville and places like that and see how nice things are, and then you hit certain developments that look like they're never going to have a tenant there ever. Reasoning behind it, it looks bad. It looks really bad. Right. So I'm frustrated to the point is that this hasn't gotten any better in my mind. I mean, because you're not going to attract the tenants that you want and that we want if it doesn't offer up some snuff. I mean, it's we're the fastest, this area is the fastest growing area in the state, Lyon Township and South Lyon. There's no reason why a lot of people wouldn't want to be here. But if your development doesn't attract them, they're not going to look there if they have to put all the money into it. You know, I mean, it's like, so I understand where you guys are at, and I get it, you know, and I said, but we also want to see things a lot more improved as well. Conceptually, I have no problem with any of this. But to approve it on a real fast bang type thing is not prudent for any of us to be doing, including you guys. So if we're going to go down this road, I believe that tomorrow you should be talking to Lynn and get this thing hashed out and give them an opportunity to do what needs to be done so they can give us what we need to be comfortable with this entire activity that we're going through here tonight.
And John, kind of on that note, I mostly agree. I mean, I think that to call a special meeting a couple of days from now is, I mean, like I said, we just got this tonight. So even if we do have it set up for, let's say, Wednesday, Thursday, that's not going to give us much time to review. I mean, I'd prefer to make sure we do this right. I don't want to lose Salvation Army, of course, but I mean, there's a reason why we give it to council for us to review. So
we're not going to lose Salvation Army. They want to be here. They're committed to this space. That's not a realistic.
okay. So if you explain to them that
there is a possibility on a technicality that we could, but I've spoken to them, and they're committed to being here, and they're looking forward to being here. So we don't want to go down that road. This is, you know, we're all in agreement. It's a question of whether they are going to be able to hit this season or push it off to next season.
Right, and I just think it would, if, you know, based off of what your feedback, I don't think it's unreasonable to say, I don't want to rush this in 2 days. I think it's better to wait until the next council meeting. That way you make sure Tim and Lynn and you guys have everything straightened out. I don't want to miss anything and all of a sudden it's not done right. So if you explain to them,
Nothing is going to be signed tonight. I wouldn't advise you to sign, and I wouldn't sign it either if it wasn't right, but it was more of a
No, of
concept,
course.
and could it be done administratively? Because I think what it is, you know, there's this amount of work left to be done, and how much does it cost? And when is it going to get done? It's a
lot more work done too.
right, and that's what I'm saying. So my preference would be to have this all ironed out and review 2 weeks from now.
I would agree to 2 weeks.
So would I, because there's no way I can make a special meeting this week or next week.
You can't do you have a relationship with the bank? Because most letters of credit are going to take at least 7 days to pull.
Yeah, I already called, and it's.
I think you're going to need
not a
7
problem,
days.
But, you know, 2 weeks is 2 weeks, so I would ask that if we could put the faith in the people that you guys have administratively with a law firm and a city manager to be able to iron out what I think is a pretty simple agreement. I would ask that we do that. That way we're not stuck to waiting for 2 weeks. It could be 2 days, it could be 2 weeks, but we at least have the ability to maneuver and make that happen if we can make it happen. That's all I'm asking.
I make a motion to postpone the approval of the completion agreement for South Lyon Square until our next meeting. So I'm postponing to a time certain.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay. Simply on the basis that I would prefer a special council meeting just to get the ball rolling. That's just my perspective.
Thank you.
No, I get that.
Tim, on this matter, would it be possible to have this agreement to us sooner than the Friday before the meeting?
Yeah, it subject to some clarifications. I'm sure we'll be following up Mr. Najor tomorrow. It's in pretty good shape for you to reconsider. I don't know if there's any interest.
I don't know, I haven't read it, but
Yeah, it's the numbers, because I saw the email attached from, was it Mike?
Yeah, the numbers in the agreement are based on Mike Darga's numbers, not the numbers that Mr. Najor provided us.
Okay, all right.
Well, those numbers should change significantly in 2 weeks, given what the contractor was telling you.
We'll find out.
I feel a lot better about a lot smaller number.
Yeah. They will, because the items have to be fully complete and approved.
That's stupid. That's why he didn't answer the question.
Wait, what?
All right, let's move on.
Let's roll on.
Consider resolution authorizing electronic transaction of public funds under Public Act 730.
Eight.
I'm just blinded out there. Of 2002, and of South Lyon ACH policy. What the heck just happened there?
I will point out that these next three agenda items sort of dovetail together. This is the framework for allowing the city to begin accepting electronic payments, credit card, debit card, ACH, online, and e-check payments. So if you've got any questions or anything like that on this, that's why there's so many of these resolutions together.
John. The 3% surcharge, is that the best we can do?
That is, and we have the representative from Point and Pay here this evening. When we get to that third section with the Point and Pay contract itself, I will have him do a brief overview of the services that they will provide before we start the discussion on that contract.
Okay. So we have to approve the resolution first?
We have to do the electronic transaction resolution and the ACH policy, and then the resolution authorizing acceptance of certain payments by financial transaction device, and then we get into the e-payment service agreement. These are all under state statute, different regulations that we have to adopt before we can accept credit cards.
John?
Joe?
Yeah, mine's just a comment. I just want to say that I think this is a big step for the city. I've spoken to so many residents who've said, why can't I pay electronically? I mean, this is just, I don't know why it took us 10 years or so to get this done, but we're finally getting out of the Stone Age here. So thank you for finally getting this for us. It goes along the same lines as updating the website, updating our sign, whatever the case may be. It's just, this is something that's needed. So I'm glad to see this before us tonight.
Thank you.
Eric?
Welcome, South Lyon, to the age of technology. I did some research, and I mean, every city I looked at, Detroit, Northville, Howell, everybody has this. So kind of along the same lines of what Joe is saying, it's nice to take that step forward and get with the times. So huge step forward. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, Lynn, I've been working with electronic pay for years, particularly in the court system. You don't even carry cash anymore, write a check. I mean, it's electronic filing with the county. Everything comes out of an electronic account. Same thing with the state of Michigan when I file documents with them. So this is sorely needed, and it's nice to know you're moving us into the 21st century. Should have been done years ago. Whatever. But it's getting done tonight.
So do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution authorizing electronic transactions of public funds under Public Act 738, 2002, improve the City of South Lyon ACH policy.
I'll second. Our third, Maggie.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consider resolution authorizing acceptance of certain payments by financial transaction device.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution authorizing acceptance of certain payments by financial transaction device as presented.
I'll support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Consider approval of Point and Pay LLC e-payment services agreement.
I'd like some discussion on this.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll start with Mr. Maloney from Point and Pay.
Nope.
Thank you for having me. I am the sales executive for the state of Michigan. I think I've been to South Lyon 4 or 5 times over the past 2 years, getting to this point. So it's been a pleasure working with Lynn, and I think I worked with Lisa quite a bit. To tell you a little bit and answer his question about the convenience fee that is charged to the credit card user. As Mary said, statewide, the city of Detroit, city of Grand Rapids, city of Warren, city of Lansing, city of Dearborn. You know, I think the top 10 cities are all clients of ours in Michigan, Northville, Novi in this area, Brighton. But the convenience fee for over 400 clients in Michigan is consistently at 3% with a $2 minimum. The reason we hold that line is because we do a revenue share with your new software vendor, which is called BSNA. And the data, whether it's a web payment that's made over the computer, an IVR payment, a phone payment, or a counter payment, all that data is going to be updated automatically. And that's the difference between us and all the other competitors. We are the preferred vendor with that software vendor. One thing I do like to point out, on a $1,000 tax bill, 3% is $30. It's pretty substantial. We do offer the option, though, on the drop-down menu, whether it be over the IVR at the counter or a web payment, to do an e-check, an ACH payment. So essentially, if the money's in your checking account, you can pay online for $3. So it gives your taxpayers, your utility bill payers, an option. So to answer your question, go ahead.
Is it 3 or 2? Because I'm looking at the agenda note, it says $2 for ACH.
Well, that would be a typo then. It's $3 up to $10,000, $10 over $10,000 for each
It
check.
says $2 for any amount.
With
Oh,
no
no, it's
minimum.
no minimum, I'm sorry, yeah.
So so that sentence is wrong.
Well, how do you justify the 3% then, if you can do the ACH for $3?
In plain English, if you have the money in your checking account, it's a lot cheaper than having to use a credit card. And utilization for your residents, taxpayers, or permits is, for taxes, this might be good information for you. It's usually 1 to 3% use us for tax. Utility billing, more like 5 to 10%. And they use our service the last week of the season. We know the sweet spot. We know the fact that they're going to use a credit card before they allow it to go over to the county.
Yeah, right.
It's just our book of business.
So if the fee's $100, if they pay it doing online,
Yep.
it'd be 103.
Yes, sir.
We'd get 100 and you'd get the 3.
Yes, and it shows up on their credit card bill. It's 2 transactions. One transaction is going to be to the city of South Lyon, $3 to point and pay. And that's pretty important to most of my elected officials in Michigan. They like the fact that it doesn't look like South Lyon's
Helpful for their
collecting fees.
tax paying too, so
Yep.
they've got a record, yeah.
Do you charge everybody $3, your other clients?
In the state of Michigan, we have 2 clients that went to RFP that are at 2.5%. That's the city of Detroit and the city of Grand Rapids.
So they're at
2.5. That's
$2.50.
because of the amount of revenue, the volume they do. The other 398 clients in Michigan are at 3%.
Ah, okay.
I'm just curious because we're, believe it or not, our little football organization's using PayPal, we're using Sports Engine, and the percentages that each each service uses, like PayPal's 2.9%. I know Sports
Those are absorbed. So we operate in a convenience fee model, meaning that the credit card user is going to pay the convenience fee. In an absorbed market, credit cards usually range the interchange fees between 1.85% and 3.25%, depending on the type of card that's used. So you'll see on a lot of retail settings, a lot of retailers say, oh, we're not going to take American Express because those interchange rates are always over 3%. We accept all 4 major credit cards, meaning American Express, Discover, MasterCard, and Visa. And we also accept debit cards backed by MasterCard and Visa. And we fund all 4 of those cards and e-checks in a consolidated settlement, which makes it nice for the staff that's doing reconciliation, meaning that they don't have to chase down when a Visa payment came in versus an American Express payment.
So in that example I gave earlier, if I use a credit card to pay my $100,
Yep.
it would be 3%, so it'd be 103, but then you would pay the credit card company
we pay all the interchange fees.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the city's not gonna get invoiced.
Right.
Like one of those auto stores that are accepting credit cards on Pontiac Trail. They're just gonna get deposits.
Right, okay.
Any other questions I can answer?
And how long is the contract with you guys?
1 year.
1 year?
Yeah, it rolls.
1 year with a minimum 180 days from the day we go live before we can issue a termination notice if we're not happy.
And Tim did ask for that 1-year contract. Our standard contract in Michigan is 3 years. So my manager did approve a 1-year contract.
I have one more question, John. Oh, so I'm all for this, and I'm for your company. If it's good enough for Brighton and Northville and Novi, then I'm fine with it. I'm just curious, from Lynn, how many places did you I don't know the market, did you check out others just to
We did. We're asking for the council to approve this as a no bid. We looked at 2 other organizations. We looked at Oakland County, which offers the service called My Access Gov, which takes online payments. They do revenue sharing back with the cities. However, they do not do full integration with BSNA, and they do not allow the integration that Point and Pay does. Point and Pay allows us to tell them what our bank accounts are for utility billing, for summer property tax, for winter property tax, and for other general fund. And when we get a payment for what specific payment, it will go directly into that bank account. And then when we get the settlement, the money is in that account. We don't have to administratively do a whole lot of journal entries. So we haven't added to our administrative side by adding credit card payments.
Okay.
We also looked at a local bank here that approached us about providing the service that was willing to waive the majority of the setup fees. However, we would have had to set up bank accounts with that bank, which would have incurred monthly fees, transfer the money from that account to our primary checking accounts, which would have been a hassle, and then again, journal entry into all of the different things. We talked to our primary bank. They were going to charge us considerable amount for setup fees, significant amount for all of the equipment. They had no integration with our system, and so Point and Pay is by far the best option.
Okay. One thing I'd like to add, we're also indemnifying the city. We're issuing a letter taking on all fraud.
Right.
The liability in the case of fraud.
This works across the board, building, whatever services we provide, this is,
It does. The counter payments, it does across the board. As we are moving forward, I'm working with the new website design so that we can take all of our permits online and at the same time potentially allow people to schedule and pay for inspections online via credit card and potentially calculate building permit fees and submit building permits.
does this also integrate with vendors and things for payments from the city or receiving, we say we had, I can't think of a great example.
I can give you an example. City of Troy just set up a library fund. So integrate's not the word, but can we set up products, is what we call them, for a library fund, for the police department to do PBTs? Yes. The one thing I like to point out, even if it's not integrated with BSNA or that department's not using BSNA software, you can still take those payments, although what Lynn said, it's going to have to be that from Point and Pay, you would update your data manually. So yes.
Yeah, right. You could set up a new fund.
Right, and we will have some of that because I've spoken to Chris Regentic at the police department, and she's interested in the ability to have credit card payments at the police department. So we are looking at allowing her to have at least a credit card swiper at the police department for her to take payments for different infractions that she takes payments for currently.
Well, with that, I'd like to make the motion that first we waive the competitive bid requirements because no advantage to the city would result because Point and Pay LLC is the only vendor for these services that integrate to the city's BSNA software.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to make a motion that we approve the e-payment services agreed with Point and Pay LLC.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, John.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to working with the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Electronic payments.
You ever think you'd see the day?
You're right, though. I've heard it a lot from a lot of people.
Lynn, can I ask a question on this?
Certainly.
If the Culture Arts Commission wanted to set up an account where people could
A donation fund. We're not at that point yet, but we hope to be able to set up that type of things. That's something that we will have to work with the auditors to create an account, and then, yes, we would be able to do that type of thing.
That's a great question. Yeah.
Well, people can make donations to volunteer park too, if people wanted
Right.
to. So if the Park and Recs set up a program where they want to start a field and people want to start contributing, I mean, you look at
Right.
these political campaigns that are out there, Bernie Sanders, I mean, $27 and he was raising millions and millions of dollars just on small amounts.
Right, it's a matter of making sure that we have everything set up online to make sure that we document what the money's coming in for and what the amount is. Those are the things that he was talking about that would have to be journal entered, but yes. And those are things that we, if they're a donation type fund, we'd have to set it up as a special fund with the auditors.
Thank you very much.
Even for a Bob's Great Water Fund?
I'm right there with you.
That's a good point, Maggie, because a lot of people do the GoFundMe, and my understanding is GoFundMe is, I don't know the figure, but somebody correct me, maybe 8% they take, something like that. So in order to do, if there was any way we could help the community and only have to pay 3%, that would be huge. So that's a great point.
Okay. Consider approval of the road closures for downtown trick or treat.
I'll make the motion that we approve the requested road closures.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's only fair to point out, while the police department does favor this, that a precedent is being set for now the second time, so maybe the precedent is actually being reinforced. But unlike prior years, there was no business sign-off for the road closures. Don't have a problem with it, just want to point it out.
Yep.
So the I'm sorry, because I'm just so used to saying yes, because it's wonderful, we need it. How far is it going to go down the road closures? Because one thing that was talked about was maybe even extending it to Browns.
No, it's only to Whipple Street.
Okay. I mean, because I think that'd be nice if we could. That's not on the table today, I guess.
No, it's not. And that creates significant issues to try to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I'm not trying to beat the dead horse. It's just I've spoken to a lot of people, and they said that, they're walking in, my kids as well, you're in wagons, and there's cars coming, and there's only limited parking, and you're walking from outside of downtown coming in. I know I would prefer that, but it sounds like there's more to it that I'm not
I
picking
think
up
the
on.
issue is probably detours for traffic coming up and down Pontiac Trail to go that far down. You'd have to use the Reynolds Suite Parkway and McHattie as detours rather than Whipple Street and Liberty.
Would it be, I'm not saying for this year, but would it be possible manageable, or is it?
We would need to look at the exact request, and then it would need to be reviewed by the police department. We'd have to collaborate with both the DPW and the fire department to determine viability of a different detour route than the ones that we customarily use. Okay. We know the ones that we normally use work and are viable.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my last comment is just with the thousands of kids that go down there, it certainly would be utilized. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, this should be quite brief. Everyone has a copy in your packet, and
If there are any questions, I'm glad to address them.
Several. I want to give you the phone number for the individual at the state of Michigan that handles the commercial rehab districts.
Okay.
Her name is Heather Cole, C-O-L-E. Her phone number is 517-335-4410, and she's extremely knowledgeable on these commercial rehab districts. Second of all, do you have a status on our application to the Main Street program?
It has been submitted, and I haven't had any feedback yet from them as far as next steps, but I think we're actually, there's no formal response that I'm aware of that they normally give. So I believe we're in, we filed the paperwork, and the only thing that they often do is ask if the city wants some kind of a recognition ceremony, but I'm waiting for that.
Okay.
My position still hasn't been filled that I left, and so there's a real lag time.
Okay.
Well, you're not getting you back, so.
Yeah. Next, I saw that you're working with property owners, Oakland County Resource Commission, the Road Commission, Oakland County, Hubble Roth, to discuss the intersection at McCandy and Lafayette for a special assessment district to solve that problem over there. My only comment on a special assessment district is, I'm not quite sure, well, it's a road issue, and we just have this. The County Road Commission seems to be spending a lot of money in Lyon Township, and we get none of it, $8 million and counting. So it'd be nice if maybe our county commissioner could sit down with the road commission and put a plug in for the city of South Lyon somewhere. Something, I just have to believe somewhere along the line, we're not making the connections. We're not doing the networking that's needed to get our share of the money. And because when you start talking about a special assessment district, I've litigated these. And so I'm not quite sure where you're going to put this district. So if it's just going to be the 5 or 6 businesses that are down there, I'm going to have a problem with that because I think that's too much of a burden to put on those businesses. But I think there was a special assessment district that was put in on McMunn, was it, years ago? Somewhere? Was that it?
Where the storm sewer collapsed.
Yeah. What, was that a special assessment district over there?
6 years ago. I'm not sure exactly how that worked, but there was talk of that.
Yeah, so you have to look at that, and I don't know how that spread, but my opinion would be anybody whose water travels in that line, whether you're on Elm Street, Liberty Street, I think everybody needs to be included to spread that cost down on that special assessment.
It's everybody upstream.
Everybody
So,
in the city.
Right, that's right.
well, I think, but I think it's basically your downtown area.
I know, but what I'm seeing, the lead streets, Liberty, Detroit Street, Lottie.
Yeah.
They all feed to
They
Pontiac
all
Trail,
feel-
which rolls.
So they would be, so they would be included in that.
Sorry, not McCaddy,
But they would be included in that special assessment district, rather than picking out 5 or 6 businesses and saying you're gonna, share the brunt, so.
Well, that's how the drain commission
Anyway,
deals with
I haven't finished, please. So I think my position is that if you're beginning to talk about a special assessment district, then I think we really need to be careful about the amount that we are gonna ask those businesses to pay, because it's right there at that corner in a business district. So I'm just advocating that we enlarge that district to lessen it, or begin networking with the road commission and other people to find some funding for it so that we aren't dealing with a mess on our hands. That's my point there. Next is, I saw your.
If I had one comment.
Yes.
The property owners approached us.
I don't think.
And so I think we will, it's very preliminary.
Yeah.
And so is an early meeting to look at all those issues.
Yeah, but I think the amount of the special assessment district will be the issue. So, next is, I saw on here that you met with and prepared and presented a sponsorship partnership request of Rizzo environmental services. I just wanted to let people know that over my business feed, Rizzo has been bought out by a Canadian company. It's GFL. And GFL is Toronto-based. It's a waste hauling company that has a very, very large, and it has reached a purchase to purchase Rizzo out of Sterling Heights, and the combination of Rizzo and GFL creates one of the industry's largest private environmental service providers. So I kind of wonder what Mr. Rizzo knew when they came in here that night and asked for the assignment of that contract. This is a very, very large deal. It is crossed international borders, and I doubt whether this deal was put together in 48 hours. So I would suggest that when the contract comes back up, I'd like to look for an American-owned company that does waste hauling and give them very strong consideration. That's my issues on the downtown. Thank you.
Wow. Well, John, if I may, I mean, that was one of the reasons why I was pushing for instead of a 3-year contract, a 1-year contract. But yeah, that was just a side note. But on the downtown, just speaking of roads in Lyon Township, and you mentioned county commissioner, I believe County Commissioner Weipert is actually appointed to SEMCOG now, isn't he, on the board? I thought I saw that he was appointed.
I don't know what his position is.
For a long time.
Okay, so he's got some connections. Yeah, and speaking of road commission, yeah, so we got this pamphlet here, and it talks about spot resurfacing program. I walk down Hagedorn Street. I have some good friends, a lot of good friends down that street, and you walk outside their front door, and it's just crumbling. It's terrible. I mean, that's one of the, and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you and I don't know.
One of the streets that Bob and I have on our plan for improvements with HRC that we're getting ready to bring to the council probably in November.
Okay, so my point is that without, I mean, that's just stood out as one of the worst ones, and
Well, it doesn't have a curb and gutter, Joe, and that's part of the problem. It feathers out as it gets closer to the curb line, and so you have no density to hold that asphalt.
right, okay. So the spot resurfacing program, it says, is a hit with motorists, and you know, Lyon Township, as you mentioned, is getting all this money, and they talk about the cost and how Oakland County's paying towards this. We really should be shaking some trees to try and get some traction with this sort of stuff. I mean, we're talking about special millages and everything, and before I can even consider that, I want to make sure nothing's left, no stones are left unturned with Oakland County.
I'd be glad to do whatever is possible in making connections, because certainly transportation routes are part of economic development.
Right, and as I mentioned, we have a county commissioner right in our hometown, so hopefully that can help out. The other thing I wanted to mention was about the downtown was I've been in other cities, and I'm sure you've seen them and you know about them, probably an expert, is they'll have almost like a guide with what the businesses are and what they are, the names, and kind of a map. I'm not going to mention the cities because I don't want to be comparing ourselves to other cities, but they're very common and they're very attractive and probably not that much money. What's your thoughts?
We have an updated listing that Lynn gave me about 3 weeks ago or so. And yes, I'd like to get that done before the holidays. It's finding the time to do it.
Understood. Yep.
Definitely, it's something that we're behind and need to do.
Okay. And, you know, maybe it can be a couple points of entry from the downtown, not just one, or maybe even the middle somewhere. I don't know. I'm thinking perhaps even in front of the old, where the former Chamber of Commerce was. That's just a suggestion. It doesn't have to be that. I'm just thinking out loud, because there's a seating area over there and everything. Next, I wanted to talk about, wanted to thank you, and I don't think anybody's mentioned this yet, but for organizing the Browns celebration. When we asked about a key, I was expecting the plaque and maybe John to get up there and say a few words, but I was not expecting the full brass ensemble. So.
Well, thank you. It was really intended to be, I think, a way to honor any business.
Yeah.
I think in the future that can put 50 years service into the community. So, and I think it sends a good message how we respect our businesses.
Yep. And I guess my last comment would be, I just listened to Mr. Nadror, and I'm sure maybe he's going to watch the tape, but certainly any business is going to be better than an empty storefront, but we need to be pushing for no more auto parts, No more. Hair salons. I mean, I'm thinking the bar needs to be high, and I have no issues with putting a business in. That's, as I mentioned, better than not having one, but I didn't like where he was heading with that, so.
Well, I'll tell you quickly that my goal is establishing firm relationships with all of the building owners, and the firmest relationships at Lake and Lafayette Street, and making it very clear that retail only is our priority for at least the first block, if not 2 blocks. First floor retail only. And that was not followed through on by Gerdam Realty, but I know that Zerlag is doing a good job. I think you're going to hear in the next 2 to 4 weeks some pretty exciting things happening.
Good.
On the former Catherine's, I believe it is, 117 North. And so there are some offers by retail and restaurant.
Good.
So we're in a position where we don't have enough spaces downtown. So then building owners are asking me to help them with relocation of office service businesses possibly. It's very sensitive, don't want to name names, but I think we'll start to get more retail.
And I said lastly, but one, just real quick, abatements and incentives, we talked about it briefly maybe a couple months ago, but we need to keep that on the forefront as well, in my
That's
opinion.
the comment we got into last week, and I'm going to follow through. And Tim and I have been talking, and we think November 1st we'll have a draft.
Thank you. That is huge. Thank you.
2 questions. Back to the traffic study. Have we heard anything back from them yet?
No, I'm getting a little upset because I'm getting stalemated. So I have to reach out to.
It seems to be, I mean, nothing against you because you got them in here. You know, we talked about it and you made the move and they came down and they actually visually saw the problem.
Lloyd,
So,
Chief of Police was
and
with
he
us
was
at
there
the
as well,
meeting,
yeah.
and he heard 30-day turnaround, and we're 5 weeks overdue.
So I know it's
They are just
the way
not
it's been in the
responding,
past,
so
and I know it's tight
Keep pressing.
walking on the rope a little bit, but I keep pushing.
We will.
And the other one is, this is a question for Lynn as well, where do we stand with the master plan?
I believe all of the reviews were due a week to 10 days ago, which means it should be coming before the council, if not next meeting, in early November for final stage approval.
Okay.
Okay. And Bob, I gotta just say that from the people I've been talking in town, I mean, you've heard this. Everybody seems to be very on board with, there's buzz in the air right now, a little bit. Everybody in the businesses used to complain a lot with each other and a lot of things, and they still do to a certain point, but there's a lot more positive comments coming out of a lot of people that never made them before, that I've noticed. And, you know, I think it's just a lot to do with how you've been walking around the town and spending time in some of the shops, and it's spreading, you know, and as people see things happening, as a Coral Sash and, you know, some of these other places fixing up their properties, it's starting to spread a little bit, and I hope it spreads a lot really fast, especially with the holiday season coming up here. Also with, I haven't talked to Dennis Dubach, but I don't know where Leon is at. I think he's still in the hospital, I believe. And I know it's a kind of a rough spot now where everything is at, but I'd like to see something or some comments or something going on of where we are with that, because that building's just not getting any better.
Well, I've had 2 contractors look at it, and we were set to go, and the nephew, Jesse, hasn't responded to our phone call. Certainly understand what he's going through. So.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we are really at a terrific position right now. You were saying how we're getting activities that we can't host anymore. There's so many people that are vying for opportunities here. I mean, this is something that we've been dying for decades, and we keep envisioning ourselves to be positioned properly to be able to handle this kind of a thing, and something happens and things just go south. But I'm finding it very hard to imagine that we're not going to really start enjoying some real production of change downtown. So I'm tickled to death by this whole thing. So, I mean, and the idea that we don't have storefronts to accommodate the activities that people are proposing, really the notion of redevelopment becomes substantially stronger. That's much more viable if a guy can spend his money expecting that he'll have tenants pretty much pre-baked. That's a great sign. I was wondering too, you had mentioned the idea of Eastern doing the inventory downtown, and where are we with that?
I meet in 2 weeks with the head of the Historic Preservation Program.
Yeah.
For them to do, at no cost, as a class project, inventory of potential National Register buildings.
Yeah.
In the whole entire city of South Lyon.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Bob. Lynn, manager's report.
Yes. It's that time again to start working on our 2017 CDBG application. Last year, members of the council asked me to look into alternative locations to spend our CDBG money. So I have. Currently, we fund several of the options that CDBG funds could go to through general fund money. One is Meals on Wheels, which is serviced through Livingston County here in South Lyon. We used to use CDBG funds to be reimbursed for that. However, they were historically difficult to get the proper paperwork to submit to Oakland County for reimbursement, and so we no longer use CDBG funds for that, but we use general fund money for that. Another organization is the South Lyon Area Youth Assistance Program, which is an organization that supports youth and family to prevent juvenile delinquency, child abuse, and neglect. But again, we support that through general fund money. It's something the council could choose to use CDBG money for. We provide CDBG funding for the Senior Center, which is the Center for Active Aging, currently located at South Lyon High School, which is a multi-jurisdictional activity with Green Oak Township and Lyon Township and South Lyon. We have a limited area in South Lyon that qualifies under CDBG income guidelines that we could use for home repairs, winterization, infrastructure improvements, anything like that. And for those, the majority of the residential areas that do fall in those areas are actually private streets, private infrastructure. So again, they wouldn't qualify under CDBG for us to use our funds for that. So that leaves us with Haven, which is a county pass-through organization that provides domestic violence, safety, prevention, and shelter for city residents. And we do get an annual report from them on how many residents from the city of South Lyon are serviced by them. We provide them a small amount. In the past, we've given them $2,500 of general fund and $2,500 of CDBG. Last year, we gave them the full $5,000 out of CDBG funds and used the general fund money to support some of the other programs. I did look into seeing whether Capernaum Healthcare clinics, which are located here in South Lyon, would qualify as a CDBG project. It does not under any of the project guidelines for CDBG. I was hoping that was because I think it's something that's very worthwhile, but it does not meet any of the federal guidelines. I will attend the CDBG application workshop next week, which is a requirement under the county guidelines, and then be coming to you in November. So my question for the council is, right now we do Haven and the Senior Center. Are there any of these other programs that do qualify that you would prefer to see us give our money to rather than Haven or the Senior Center, or to split off the funding? There are minimum requirements that you have to give a minimum of $3,000 to any one project. So if we're going to split money off, we're going to either be taking it away from the Senior Center, or we're going to be splitting that donation off from Haven, and then ending up either reducing what we do give to Haven, and they have asked for an increase this year, or we are going to be eliminating Haven.
I think we will end up supporting everybody we always consistently have. It'll just be where the funds are coming from. So
Well,
it
and
seems
that's
like the senior center is the one that makes the most sense, quite honestly, to me. So
Do you want to continue to support Haven with CDBG funds?
either way, I mean, either one is fine with me, because I intend to push for us continuing to support all of the things that we've done, whether it's general fund or CBDG. I don't care.
Well, by doing it through Haven, it is a pass-through for the county, so we don't have to write a check. We allocate the funds to them, and the county just transfers it.
Right? That
I've
streamlines
been
the
a big
process.
supporter of the Haven project. I used to sit on the Public Safety Committee at the county, and they used to come before us every so often and give a presentation. And you know, when those folks investigate a sexual assault and go to court and testify, they always win. They're that good. So I'm very, very supportive of the Haven project.
Question, are we, you said we are currently funding South Lyon Youth Assistance?
Yes, we fund it through the general fund.
Okay, yeah, and I have the same feeling. I mean, if you pull it from this hand or this hand, as long as we have the same funding, South Lyon Youth Assistance, Center for Active Adults, Haven, all very well and worthy causes, so.
Haven would take care of domestic violence.
Yes.
I think that's real important. I think that we have this culture that somehow believes that it is okay to scream at women, holler at women. That's a step of violence, you know. Unfortunately, we saw over the weekend another attack on women, and I just think that the culture has come so ingrained where certain conduct is just acceptable, and these women really don't have places to go. So I would definitely support Haven. I think that's real important.
Okay.
It changes a life is what it does. It gives the woman and her children. You know, a lot of these women, if it was just them, maybe they could go with a sister or whatever. But Haven also, I understand, takes the children.
Yeah.
You know, these are women with children. So you're protecting not just the mother, but the child and the family that comes with her. So
It changes life, saves lives.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so I will do the application as we've done it for the past several years. I want to remind you that you have in your packets an invitation to the retirement party for Lanny Young, the Lyon Township Supervisor. RSVPs for that activity is due on October 20th if you're going to attend.
Which happens to be downtown trick-or-treat night.
It is downtown trick-or-treat night, yes, the activity is. I want to remind everyone that this week we have Parks and Rec Commission and Cable Commission on Wednesday, and the DDA and Planning Commission meetings on Thursday, if anybody is interested in attending. Of course, the DDA meeting is at 8:30 in the morning. I know you all work, so that might be rather difficult, but those are the meetings that are going on this week. Want to remind everyone, the general public as well, that the farmers market is still open in the downtown every Saturday. We've got 3 more weeks open, so make sure you come out and get your fall produce, your Halloween goodies, and enjoy the market before it closes for the season. And then I want to remind any of the downtown businesses or any businesses that are wanting to participate in the trick-or-treat that they need to contact Bob Donahue and get the pumpkin that goes in your window, so anybody that is participating knows, and that way no business gets missed. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you.
Oh, actually, no, it's not. Bob reminded me. We need to thank Lowe's Hardware for all of the hard work that they did in the historic village with the new fence, split rail fence, and
Painting the well house.
Painting the well house, and fixing the railing on, was it the bridge by the,
So Lowe's did all of the split rail, painted. We cannot say enough about this organization. They stepped out to reached out to us and asked what they could do, and after spending 2 or 3 times with them, they made the offer. They made the push to do a big job, not a small job, which is just wonderful. And then this past weekend, a wonderful group out of St. Joe's Catholic Church donated time to try to paint. Actually, it was a week ago, and it poured all weekend. They came back Thursday and Friday and painted over the last week on their own time and painted both bridges in McCaddy Park. Very, very nice.
Was that the youth ministry?
No, it wasn't. It was a diocese-wide service day among many Catholic churches. And in fact, Faith, do you know the lady? Her first name's Faith. I'm sorry, I don't know her last name. She's the one that spearheaded it and got about 8 or 10 people, and all I said is thank you.
The diocese had a program where it was called Acts of Random Kindness. So it might have been associated with that, where they just went and asked for a project that people just didn't expect would be
They
done.
had 160 volunteers work in the community that day.
Yeah.
Okay, council comments. Let's start with Councilman Kittle.
Let's see. I don't have anything.
I just wanted to say thank you again to Ed Brown and his entire family and everything they've done for South Lyon, because it is a big deal, the charm that they brought to our little city and the years of service that they've given us. So thank you again and good luck in your retirement. Thank you.
We were talking about the fence, and I think that's wonderful. And I say that because I know some of the people that work at Lowe's, and Lowe's out of New Hudson, and they don't live in South Lyon. But they care enough about this city that even though they don't live in this city, that they feel like it's their home. And they care, and they want to donate, and they want to give back. And we need to remember that these people that are helping out live outside of the city, and to me, they're part of our community. So I want to thank them as well. Also want to mention, and this is still a little ways away, but Saturday, December 10th at 7 p.m., there's a fundraiser for Operation Injured Soldiers at the VFW Hall downtown. So I'm sure you'll see more online and on Facebook closer to the date, but just want to put that out there now. I want to also say that I'm very excited to see that there's a new Mediterranean food restaurant coming in. Maybe I really like Mediterranean food myself. So, Bob, do you know what the timeline is? I stopped by when they were doing some work inside, and they said it's going to be about a couple months.
That's all I know, too. That's
Okay.
all I know. I don't have an exact date.
Okay. Well, maybe, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, but then I know there's a lot of talk about that, so there's a lot of buzz. That's right next to the liquor store and to Pro's Pizza, so that's really exciting. Also want to congratulate South Lyon and South Lyon East. They had a football game on Friday. It was a little bit one-sided. I was hoping it would be closer, but seeing both schools come together it was really nice, and it just kind of goes with the theme that I was mentioning of one community, because these are kids that go to school that are friends, but they go to separate schools, and they're all together, and everybody was getting along really well. And it was so nice seeing everybody in South Lyon High School. And as I've reminded in the past, and I will continue to do so, we do have students who live in the city of South Lyon who attend South Lyon East. So they're part of the city as well, in my mind. Lastly, I wanted to just mention the slide that Carl mentioned downtown. Down in McCaddy Park, excuse me. Thank you for fixing that. Bob, I assume that was your guys that fixed that. Okay. And then, it's the little things that you guys do that sometimes don't go noticed, and I think, Carl, thank you for bringing them up. Valuable asset. Thank you, sir. And with that, good night.
And let me tell you, my guys look out for stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about them. They're in the park cleaning every day, dumping garbage, and checking for stuff like that.
And actually, I'm sorry, I think it was I remember at the Parks and Rec meeting, Jody Movins from the Parks and Rec Commission, I think she mentioned it as well. So I don't know if she had a hand in that and bring it to your attention, but I know she mentioned it, so thank you to her for bringing that up. Appreciate it.
I guess I want to reiterate, I can't say the word, reiterate what Glenn said, basically. We have the luxury, I guess, of living downtown. Mary does now too. And we've been here a long time, and we've all had this idea, I think, in our mind how things were going to go. And we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, you know, and it hasn't gone as well at times as we think it would, but it's starting to now. And what I've noticed since I live downtown, I have the opportunity to talk to a lot of people, even when I don't want to talk to a lot of people. It takes me forever to do yard work. The difference in the tone, in the voices that I've been hearing is huge. And before, it was real easy to say there was just a lot of loud voices and a lot of banging on the table and complaining about a lot of things, and that would override all the good stuff that was going on. But you're hearing this from everybody. It doesn't matter where we go now, go to a football game, pumpkin fest, coffee shop, any of the brew pubs in town, just walking around the neighborhood. People that are living in the township are even coming in and being very outspoken about what they're seeing and what they like. And to me, that's huge optimistic voices that haven't been heard before, except for a handful, it seems like, you know. So it's all starting to kind of come together, and the patience has been good. And I know we want to complain about how we didn't do things and how we did do things, but it's so easy to armchair quarterback why a decision was made and why a decision wasn't made. There was a lot of economic issues that came into play, a lot of noise, for better words to use, that was causing a lot of decisions being made. All I know is we're here now, and everybody's starting to get on board, and I'm liking the tone, and I'm liking what I'm hearing, because everybody's bringing something, and nobody's not carrying any weight at all. Everybody is saying something to somebody. They got their constituents that they talk to, their people they have on their email lists and whatever, and it's making a difference. So I want to say thanks to everybody, and that's what I have to say tonight.
I'm done, thanks.
Just real quick, Glenn and I met with our counterparts in Lyon Township on the fire discussions, fire department discussions. It was a very productive meeting. We met with John Dolan and Patricia Carconi and the fire chief for Lyon Township, and Mike, our fire chief, was there. We hope to have more continued discussions, and I believe our next meeting is going to be scheduled sometime, after the first of the year. No rush. And that's it. Thank you.
I just wanted to let everyone know, I'd like to once again thank Kathy for Pumpkin Fest. I'm going back to Pumpkin Fest. I got 3 cards in the mail from individuals that said, you know, Maggie, it was just so good running into you at Pumpkin Fest. Please call me. We need to meet again. So I think that the trickle effect of Pumpkin Fest is still there. And I still will say it was just a great, great opportunity to run into people that I hadn't seen in a while from all over. And a lot of people that I miss seeing. So thank you, Kathy, for providing a great opportunity to rejoin with friends and get back to the art of conversation. Additionally, I've been in, a lot of people know that I go to a lot of the planning commission meetings in the area, and I've been receiving a lot of emails from individuals in the Brookfield subdivision, Oak Creek, Maple Creek, and my neighbors over in Hidden Creek about the 9-mile corridor and the issues that are going to create problems for traffic at the 9-mile and Pontiac intersection in about 3 years. I plan to get over to Lyon Township and get the details on the project going on 9-mile and Griswold. I don't think they've quite started construction there, but the one that started all the emails that came to me was the big project over on Rushton and 9-mile. And so I went to that meeting last Thursday. It was packed. It was just packed over there. And there is another development that will be coming in that is going through the planning commission process. It is going to be a high-density area. And one thing I wanted to bring to the attention to Lynn is that they are presently in the process of doing their road commission study. And specifically, the question was asked if they are including Pontiac Trail and 9 Mile in that study, and the answer was no. This is a development that will have about 257 single-family homes. That amounts to about 600 more cars that will be coming in. They are single-family, so their kids will be going into the schools. Additionally, what I learned last Thursday night was that I think it's Woodwind, it's the manufactured community there. I thought that community was done, and it's not. And there are more manufactured homes going into that community. So it's anticipated close to 800 more vehicles in the next 3 years just on that side of town will be coming through that intersection of 9 Mile and Pontiac Trail. So somewhere along the line, the communities are going to have to start getting together, South Lyon, Livingston, Green Oak, and Lyon Township, because 9 Mile and Pontiac Trail, that intersection is not going to handle it. And my neighbors at Hidden Creek, when they emailed me, they said, for Pete's sake, Maggie, we can't even get out of the sub in the morning anymore. And if you think that's bad, go to the 2 middle schools. And now you're going to dump more, and the development, I think, on Griswold and 9 Mile is all single-family also. So that corridor right in there is just going to be a nightmare. It already is. It already is. So I'm raising the red flag, and I think somehow somebody needs to sit down, maybe Lynn, you could get with St. Charles and Mark and just say, we need to start thinking about how our intersection, I mean, if you're dealing with the road commission, I don't know, but I'm just letting you know. So I'm going to stay in touch. I got an email list of tons of people I'm emailing on the 9 Mile Corridor project. I'm doing the best I can, people. I know about 7 of you are going to watch the meeting tonight. I mean, there's only so much I can do. Thank you for thinking of me, but there's only so much I can do, and you got to let the other individuals that handle this kind of stuff, but it is going to be bad. They can't handle it. 9 Mile and Pontiac Trail will not be able to handle this. I was shocked about this development on Rushton. So it's not approved yet. They've got a little bit more planning they need to do, but it looks like it's potentially going to be approved in the next 6 months. And they want to build ASAP. Other than that, I'm done for the evening. I want to thank everybody. Thank you for letting me into your home this evening. Good night, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Good night.